Chapter 834. Lord Jiu could now conclude that Long Outyen's eldest son was indeed flawed. So bitter. Lord Jiu, I'll explain it to you in the future, Long Outyen said helplessly. He was too embarrassed to say that he had tied him up like this. I understand. Jiu Yi patted onto Long Outyen's shoulder, expressing his consolation. This eldest son of mine seems to be suffering from polio. Sigh. How pitiful. Lord Jiu had no choice but to stretch out his hand and pinch Chu Yuxuan's cheek. It was really a little weird. Doggy, Long Yang seemed to like Xiao Bao. He patted Xiao Bao's head, and Xiao Bao did not resist. Chu Yuxuan also reached out to touch it, but Little Treasure immediately grinned. Father! Chu Yuxuan looked towards Long Outyen and shouted out. Chu Yuxuan's mental state seemed to have returned back to when he was 10 years old. Long Outyen didn't even want to say anything. It was all his fault. He hadn't used needles for too long, and he had become an idiot. In the future, he would have to stab it back, but he didn't want to die. Lord Jiu, come and sit, Long Outyen said. Lord Jiu patted Long Outyen's shoulder happily. However, when he saw the death assassin, he couldn't help but become vigilant. Is this the black robe or not? He couldn't tell at all. The entire skeleton really sent chills down his spine. Lord Jiu, this is my master. Master, this is Lord Jiu. Long Outyen introduced them to each other. Death Assassin nodded his head, then stood up and returned to the room. Long Outyen was already used to it. His master was still very cold. If he had a physical body, he would definitely be a domineering CEO who had fallen in love with him. Outyen, how did you come here? Jiu Yi curiously asked. I followed my master here. I don't know what happened either. I just came over with a bayou sound. That's way too hasty. Long Outyen laughed. However, he was used to it now. After all, life was the same no matter where he was. So that's how it is, Master Jiu muttered. Lord Jiu, how did you get here? Lord Jiu sighed. I found a treasure, then I came over. Who brought that dog here? Long Outyen looked at Lil Bao, who was playing with his son. Chu Yuxuan stood to the side, looking unhappy. Why wasn't he playing with him? Yes, a friend entrusted him to me. After that, he never appeared again. Xiao Bao is the closest person to me. Lord Jiu looked at Xiao Bao with a gentle gaze. In Lord Jiu's eyes, Xiao Bao was better than other people. Long Outyen patted Lord Jiu's shoulder. Do you have any plans for the future? I don't know yet. I came here to relax. Wherever I go, I'll see the different scenery. It's too tiring over there. Lord Jiu said helplessly. He did not want to continue the days of scheming and scheming. He had enough of being a servant. It was time to be himself again. Of course, Long Outyen hoped that Lord Jiu would stay. After all, they were from the same hometown. Lord Jiu, do you want to stay? Long Outyen asked. That's exactly what I was thinking. After all, we're from the same place in this world. Long Outyen was also relieved. He shouted at his wife. Meng Meng, cook a few more dishes. Understood. Husband. Meng Meng replied with a light smile. For Long Outyen to have a wife like Meng Meng, it could also be counted as a kind of fortune. However, right at this moment, the two of them felt that something was amiss. A few weak auras were flying towards their direction. Someone is coming, Lord Jiu said gravely. Long Outyen tightly wrinkled his brows. I have been here for a few months and I have not seen a single person. Why did so many people suddenly appear today? At this moment, Long Outyen immediately looked towards Chu Yuxuan. Could it be that they are here to look for me? Seems like it's most likely, but I didn't expect that the peace would still be broken. Long Yang, who was playing with Xiao Bao outside, raised his head and looked towards the blue sky. Wow, so beautiful! Chu Yuxuan also looked towards the sky and mumbled, Indeed very beautiful. Above the blue sky, a spotlessly white and flawless flower could be seen streaking across the horizon. Little brother, do you like it? Chu Yuxuan asked. I like it. Long Yang clapped his little hands and shouted. Brother will bring it over for you then. All right. All right. Chu Yuxuan directly rushed towards the horizon and instantly snatched the flower that was flying in the sky. The flower was in the shape of a petal, but the petal was diamond-shaped and emitted a cold feeling. Holding it in one's hand in summer, not only was it beautiful, it could also relieve the heat. Little brother here. Chu Yuxuan smiled and stretched out his hand. Long Yang, who was only 5 years old, mischievously laughed and said, "Thank you, big brother." "No need to thank me." At this time, Long Outyen walked out and saw that there was suddenly something in his son's hand. He asked doubtfully, "Younger, what are you holding in your hand?" "Daddy, big brother just brought it down from the sky for me." Before he could finish his sentence, 8 people could be seen directly landing in the courtyard. Looking at their appearance, they were still considered young. They should be in their 20s. Dressed in a bright green robe on the chest area, there was a mountain range engraved, and there was also a small foreign word. I didn't expect that there would actually be people in this barren land. The tone of the person who spoke was a bit arrogant. He was the boss of this group of people, called Pangda. "Senior brother, I heard from others that there should be no people in this barren land." A disciple standing behind Pangda said doubtfully. Pangda looked at the flower in Long Outyen's hand and said in a deep voice, "Whether it's true or not today, this ice lotus is mine." Long Yang felt that his treasure was about to be robbed, so he quickly put it away. His little eyes seemed to be saying that you are all bad people. Looking at little Bao, he was no longer surprised and behaved very calmly. It seemed that he was also a golden retriever who had seen big scenes. "Who are you and why should I give it to you?" Not waiting for Long Outyen to speak, Chu Yuxuan took the lead to ask. Protecting his family was his duty. Pangda coldly snorted and pointed to the pattern on his chest. "You country bumpkins, do you know what this represents?" Everyone was very puzzled. When Long Outyen saw the word foreign, he suddenly thought of the manga Dragon Ball that he had read before. They like to print their names on their chest. "Your surname is foreign," Long Outyen said aloud. The disciples at the back immediately held back their laughter and almost laughed out loud. Their senior brother had recently found a little beauty, and it was just a small jade vein peak. Although the beauty was still relatively small, their senior brother planned to raise her up. Thus, he tried every possible way to find this ice lotus and chased after it all the way here. Pang Da's face immediately turned black and shouted angrily, "As expected of a group of country bumpkins, do you know what this represents?" "It represents heaven." "Oh. You are called Waitian." Long Outyen suddenly realized. Pang Da. A disciple at the back finally couldn't hold it in anymore and burst out laughing, but he immediately stopped laughing. "I am an outer sect disciple of Broken Vein sect. If you are sensible, then kowtow and admit your mistake, then offer the ice lotus with both hands." Broken Vein sect? Everyone was very puzzled. They didn't understand, but they felt that it was awesome. End of this chapter. Chapter 835. Jiu Yi stood out at this moment and said with a smile, "Little brother, don't be so impulsive with your words. This ice lotus is in the hands of a child. Could it be that a child can snatch it from your broken something sect?" "Presumptuous, old man. That is the broken something sect, not some broken something sect." A disciple stepped forward and shouted. Pang Da sneered, "Insulting the broken something sect, all of you must die." Long Outyen and Jiu Yi were a little confused. This is completely unreasonable. He wants to kill all of us at the drop of a hat. This is even more excessive than our home. At least we can communicate with our home, but not here. We don't even have the chance to refute. "Woo-woo, daddy." Long Yang seemed to be frightened as he cried and ran to Long Outyen's feet. Chu Yuxuan looked at this group of people coldly. "They actually made my little brother cry. This is a heinous crime. I can't help but want to make a move. Eldest son, bring my youngest son into the house." Long Outyen didn't even know what the other party's name was, so he could only address them like this. However, he was certain that these people weren't here to find his eldest son, but rather that ice lotus. Chu Yuxuan glared at Pang Da and his group, warning them not to act recklessly. Otherwise someone will die. Then, he brought Long Yang into the house. Pang Da waved his hand, and the disciples spread out and formed a special formation. "Today, I will let all of you witness the strength of the broken something sect." Pang Da pulled out the sword from his waist. His strength had actually reached rank 1 Do Shi. That was so awesome. Long Outyen and Jiu Yi looked at each other. Why do these people feel that they are brainless? It seems like you are the ones who are going to be killed. However, at this moment, Death Assassin suddenly walked out from the house. When these broken something sect disciples saw Death Assassin, they were all stunned. Undead! Pang De shouted. Because of what happened back then, the undead had become the public enemy of the Kangluo continent. As long as an undead appeared, they would all be killed. Even the weakest undead would be trampled into dregs by hundreds of people. After the shock, Pang De suddenly laughed loudly. You came at the right time. I have never killed an undead before. I will break this record today. Sword formation, prepare. Ha! The sword formation formed by the 8 Do Shurs was somewhat effective. A green pattern appeared on the ground, emitting an extraordinary Do Qi. The long swords in everyone's hands also emitted a green glow, and the Do Qi in their bodies completely erupted. Long Outyen and Elder Jiu were ready to fight. However, Death Assassin, who was standing at the entrance, slowly pulled out his dagger. Death Assassin doesn't have any good impression of humans, therefore. The Death Assassin's figure flashed, and in just half a breath's time, the Death Assassin had already returned to his original position. There was a bit of blood on the dagger of the Death Assassin, and it seemed like the Death Assassin was not satisfied. After keeping the dagger, the Death Assassin turned around and went back into the house. On the other hand, Long Outyen and Jiu Yi didn't notice the Death Assassin's actions at all as they looked at the 8 stupefied people. Holy shit! Are you guys still going to fight? Can't you move a little? Long Outyen could not help but ask. Suddenly, the necks of the 8 people turned red. Because the speed was too fast, they didn't even have time to react to the wound. Jiu Yi cried out involuntarily. Long Outyen already knew what was going on. Master must have made a move. Master is too awesome. We don't even know if Master made a move just now. Jiu Yi was very puzzled. That black-gowned person's weapon was a sickle, and that black-gowned person just now was using a dagger. Seems like they are different. Just as Jiu Yi finished speaking, the 8 people held onto their necks. However, the arteries on their necks were cut open, and even though they were holding onto their necks, blood was still flowing out from the gaps between their hands. Everyone's gaze was filled with astonishment. The 2 people in front of them didn't even move, and even the undead that was standing at the entrance didn't move as well. However, how did we get injured? Right now, Pang De found it hard to believe as he shouted out with a hoarse voice. You guys dare to kill Meridian Break Sect's people. Meridian Break Sect will not let you guys off. They will chase you guys to the ends of the earth. After finished speaking, a black plate condensed in Pang Da's hand and immediately crushed it. Afterward, he looked at the 8 people with a sinister smile. You guys, will receive the most painful death. I will be waiting for you guys over there. Pang Da uttered out his final threat with difficulty as he slowly fell onto the ground. The blood that was flowing out from his necks had long dyed the green gown that he was wearing red. The 8 people twitched on the ground, and very quickly, they lost their lives. After a long while, Long Outyen said, Jiu Yi, we seem to have offended a very powerful force. And, looking at the situation, it should be so. Just now, he seemed to have crushed the black plate. He should be trying to save us. Jiu Yi guessed. His expression was a bit grave. These people looked ordinary, but they were just some small fries. If they were to really encounter a huge organization, they would be powerless even if they wanted to. Long Outyen said gravely, Jiu Yi, it seems like we should run away, this is safer. Jiu Yi nodded his head. Right now, the only thing we can do is run away. Because we are not sure of the strength of the other party, we cannot take any risks. However, before we run away, we still have to finish our meal, right? Haha, Outyen, it has been a few years since we last met, and you have changed a lot. Long Outyen laughed loudly and said, Jiu Yi, all men will grow up. That's right, in the past I already felt that you were a talent, and as expected I was right. Jiu Yi must be joking. How am I a talent? Compared to teacher, I am just trash. Long Outyen was very humble. If it was the Long Outyen in the past, he would have accepted such flattery calmly, and even felt as if he was walking on air. While they were eating, in the Breaking Pulse Sect's outer courtyard's law enforcement squad, a group of men were chatting. Of course, the content of their conversation was about beauties. After all, when men gathered together, the topic was either training or women. This was how the Kangluo continent was like. Leader Mao, I heard that there is a little beauty in the Jade Pulse Peak. Have you heard of her? Leader Mao, full name Mao Hao, was the leader of the Breaking Pulse Sect's outer courtyard's law enforcement squad. His strength was that of a rank 5 Do Wang, very powerful. In the outside world, a rank 5 Do Wang would be treated very well. But in the Breaking Pulse sect, a rank 5 Do Wang could only be the leader of the outer courtyard's law enforcement squad. Mao Hao laughed softly. How could I not have heard of her? The outer courtyard has gone crazy, and it has even spread to the inner courtyard. Although I did not see her in person, this kind of crazy news shows that this little beauty's appearance is indeed shocking. Leader Mao, this little beauty is not only beautiful, but she has already reached the level of a doge at the age of 6. When the time comes, she will definitely enter the inner courtyard. She might even be a good seedling for our Breaking Pulse sect. Mao Hao nodded. Yes, a 6-year-old doja is indeed very powerful. I heard that she has a younger brother, who is also a little abnormal. He is only 5 years old. Do you know what happened to the female disciple of the Jade Pulse Peak? She actually peeped at other people's children bathing, and even wrote love letters to them. End of this chapter. Chapter 836. These two siblings are indeed very powerful. Our sect master should have already taken a liking to them. Right now, they are just staying there to train, and when the time comes, they will directly enter the inner courtyard. Mao Hao understood the rules of Meridian Breaking Sect very well. Some abnormal people don't even need to stay in the outer courtyard and directly enter the inner courtyard to train. But I heard that a pair of siblings appeared in the Shen institution. They are also extremely abnormal, and their appearance is also rather shocking. Mao Hao raised his teacup and drank a mouthful, then said with a light smile, "We will see the results 10 years later. We and the Shen institution are mortal enemies, this pair of siblings fighting against each other, it will be a bit interesting." After saying that, Mao Hao was a bit looking forward to the competition 10 years later. Who exactly is stronger? Suddenly, a law enforcement member ran over and said respectfully, "Leader Mao, a disciple that went out crushed the black card." Black card? Hearing this, Mao Hao's brows tightly wrinkled. Because the black card represented a possibility that the disciple was already dead. It should have been 10 years. In the entire Meridian Breaking Sect, no disciple had ever crushed the black card. Who would have thought that it would actually appear 10 years later? Who is it? Mao Hao asked curiously. It is a few disciples from the outer courtyard. Mao Hao stretched out his hand, and that law enforcement member handed over a black card to Mao Hao. After receiving the black card, Mao Hao's big hand emitted out a bit of Do Qi. The black card instantly lit up, and an image appeared in the air. Meridian Breaking Sect's black card not only told the sect that the disciple had died, it also had the effect of recording. Although the recording time was not long, it was enough to know who killed the disciple of Meridian Breaking Sect. Everyone looked at the image, very curious. Who dared to kill the disciple of Meridian Breaking Sect? That person was simply tired of living. Gradually, the image appeared in everyone's eyes. A skeleton face could be seen. Looking at this face, everyone's scalp instantly went numb, and even their bodies froze. 10 years ago, it was also this face that carried out inhumane massacres in the south, causing the humans to suffer heavy losses. Fortunately, various overlords appeared, and only then did those people all die, although the losses were very heavy. Mao Hao had seen a lot of undead's faces, although they were all the same, but this face. Mao Hao felt fear. Just like back then, just by hearing this face, I was so scared that I didn't even dare to move. Such a fast speed. Just like how I was back then, just by hearing this face, I was so scared that I didn't dare to move. Such a fast speed. Mao Hao was shocked. He couldn't even see the undead's movements. There were only two possibilities for such a powerful undead. One was that the undead from back then had not died. Otherwise, another perverted undead would appear, and the tragedy from back then would happen again. And this time, the first target was the disciples of the Broken Pulse sect. Something big had happened. Hardened hair felt his body stiffen. He unleashed the aura of a Do Wang and dispelled the fear in his heart. Hard Hair immediately picked up the black card on the table, ran out of the door, and directly flew towards the inner courtyard. However, everyone in the room seemed to have been frozen in place. They were all frightened by the skull face. That was because the nightmare from 10 years ago was too deeply ingrained in people's hearts. If the undead were to return, it would be a disaster. It was forbidden to fly in the outer and inner courtyards, unless there was a major emergency. At this time, there were still many disciples in the outer courtyard of the Broken Pulse sect who were either training or discussing matters regarding training. However, A Do Wang aura came from all directions. All the disciples were stunned because this aura was too violent. They thought that bad people had broken into the Broken Pulse sect. However, when they saw the clothes of this person, all the disciples were relieved but also very confused. It seemed that in the inner courtyard, one could only fly like this if there was a major emergency. However, the leader of the law enforcement team was charging into the inner courtyard without any regard for his life. What was going on? Could it be that something big had happened? All the disciples watched the leader of the law enforcement team fly past and immediately began to chat. What was going on? Some of the teachers of the outer courtyard were also very confused. They hadn't seen such a situation in 10 years. They still clearly remembered that 10 years ago, the entire Broken Pulse sect was flying in the sky to convey information. Could something have happened? When Mao Hao arrived at the inner courtyard, the students of the inner courtyard were all proud and arrogant. The sudden appearance of the leader of the law enforcement team from the outer courtyard and the sudden appearance of the leader of the law enforcement team was simply too rude. Did he think that there was no one in the inner courtyard? Over 10 disciples from the inner courtyard blocked Mao Hao's path. Although you are the leader of the law enforcement team from the outer courtyard, it is unreasonable for you to fly so recklessly in the inner courtyard. One of the disciples said in a deep voice. Mao Hao looked at this group of people coldly and said, "Get out of the way. I have an urgent matter to report to the sect leader." Then you have to report to the dean of the outer courtyard first. The dean will then report to the sect leader. You are offending your superior. Mao Hao couldn't help but curse. A group of arrogant and reckless geniuses from the inner courtyard. Mao Hao shouted angrily and a strong and vigorous Do Qi suddenly erupted. It actually formed a huge wave of Do Qi in the air and instantly spread out. Although these disciples from the inner courtyard were very powerful, they were still no match for this Do Wang. They had used their status to suppress others, but they were all blown away by this wave of Do Qi. Mao Hao once again ran wildly without any regard for his life, forming a black curtain in the air. Quickly stop him. The leader of the law enforcement team from the outer courtyard is beating someone up. The leader of the law enforcement team from the outer courtyard is barging into the inner courtyard and even beating someone up. He will definitely harm the sect leader. Following these people's shouts, the entire inner courtyard was alarmed. Mao Hao's path was once again blocked. This time, the people blocking him were all experts of the Do Zone level. Mao Hao looked at this group of idiots. Don't tell me that I have to tell them that the skeleton has returned? The entire Kangluo continent will be in chaos. A group of idiots. Idiots. How dare you? Mao Hao, have you really become hard? Don't you know where you are? At this moment, Mao Hao was not afraid at all. He angrily shouted, "Get out of the way! I have an urgent matter to report to the sect leader. If you continue to block me, you will not be able to bear the consequences. Mao Hao, you better be obedient. Follow me back to the main law enforcement team to explain." The one who spoke was from the law enforcement team of the inner courtyard. Behind the two law enforcement teams was the main law enforcement team. A group of idiots. Get lost. Mao Hao was going all out. With the strength of a grade 5 Do Wang, he was fighting against 7 or 8 Do Zongs. However, the disciples standing below were also very stunned. Was this leader of the law enforcement team of the outer courtyard stupid? He actually dared to provoke a Do Zong. Moreover, he was challenging a Do Zong in a group. These 7 or 8 Do Zongs were frowning tightly. Although they could defeat Mao Hao in an instant, they did not do so. They only heard a gentleman ask, "Mao Hao, if you have anything to say, you can say it. Do you have to make a fuss here? Do you know what the consequences are?" F***ck the consequences. If you delay me now, you will be trampling on the safety of the Kangluo continent. End of this chapter. Chapter 837. Looking at Mao Qiong's demeanor and tone, the other Do Zongs became suspicious. If something big really happened and they were delayed, they really couldn't take responsibility. Mao Qiong, you better have a good explanation, or else your position as the leader will end. The inner court's law enforcement team leader coldly shouted. Today, he was actually scared off by a Do Wang, and 7 or 8 Do Zongs at once. If Mao Qiong didn't have something good to show, he was basically dead. You don't need to say that. Everyone move aside. Mao Qiong directly passed by the 7 or 8 dozongs, and they sighed in relief and hurriedly followed. On the mountain peak at the edge of the Broken Vein sect was the sect hall. Behind the sect hall was a boundless ocean. The sea water hit the bottom of the cliff, making waves that made people feel relaxed and happy. "Stop!" The 2 guards outside the sect hall coldly shouted. At a glance, these 2 guards had the strength of a Do Wang, as expected of the Broken Vein sect. At this time, Mao Qiong didn't dare to force his way in, and shouted loudly, "I have something to report to the sect leader. It concerns the safety of the entire Kangluo continent." Hearing Mao Qiong's words, the 2 guards were obviously a little surprised, because the situation was too serious. At this time, the dozongs also descended. The door of the sect hall was closed, and there were 2 people sitting inside. One was the sect leader, Chong Hen. This person had the demeanor of a middle-aged man, giving people the feeling that he was a scholar. He wore a simple white robe, and there was a gentle smile on his face, but his eyes were captivating. Because this Chong Hen was a Ji Zun. The person sitting below was also a middle-aged man, his body was fat, and the first impression he gave people was, a pig killer. The oil on his face was really embarrassing. If there was sunlight, it would definitely reflect light. In addition to his height of less than 160, he was simply like a meatball. But no one dared to call him a meatball, because he was also a Ji Zun. Today, he came to find his good friend Chong Hen for a chat. "Chong Hen, I heard that 2 talented disciples appeared in your sect. Is there such a thing?" Luan Yen asked while drinking a cup of high-quality spring tea. Enduring Hatred chuckled. "I was wondering why you would suddenly come to my place. It turns out that you're here for someone. Brother Everlasting Hatred, you also know that I like people with extraordinary talent." Luan Yen laughed. His laughter did not match his physique. It was as if a heroic warrior had suddenly turned into a short fatty. Eternal Hatred also picked up the spring leaf tea in front of him, took a sip, and smiled without saying anything. "I say, Brother Everlasting Hatred, you can't be so stingy. How about I just take one?" Luan Yen began to bargain. He had planned to do this anyway. Eternal Hatred lowered the teacup, saying with a smile, "Why don't you go ask Deity Institution? Maybe I can give you one." Shen Institution? That heartless one? I feel uncomfortable just looking at his face. Brother Everlasting Hatred, don't be like that. Eternal Hatred said with a smile. "Luan Yen, it isn't that I, Eternal Hatred, am being stingy, but I am preparing to take this pair of siblings as my final disciples. That iceberg face from Deity Institution probably has similar thoughts as well. After all, there aren't many good saplings. It's just that there aren't many good seedlings. That's why I'm sharing one with you. You'll feel less pressure too. When you need it, I'll send it over to you. How about that?" "Luan Yen, there's no room for discussion between siblings. You stingy. Especially stingy. I don't want to talk to you anymore," Luan Yen said while panting with rage. Eternal Hatred smiled and shook his head. Just how old was he already, yet he still said such words. Just as the 2 were conversing, Herhard's voice sounded out from outside. After the 2 supremes heard, they looked at each other. Something related to Kangluo Continent's crisis? "Come in," Eternal Hatred shouted indifferently. The smile on his face gradually disappeared. The sect master had the might of a sect master. Luan Yen, who was at the side, did not plan to participate. He only wanted to hear what kind of matter could threaten the entire Kangluo continent. It was simply too fake. Do you think that it's that skeleton making a comeback? But that's impossible. Back then, even the bones were burned. Herhard, who was standing outside, heard the voice and felt joy in his heart. The guards opened the door, and Herhard hurriedly rushed in. The dozong behind also hurriedly followed, as if Herhard was going to assassinate the sect master. "Sect master!" Herhard shouted while kneeling. "Sect master!" The dozong behind also saluted. Eternal Hatred asked in a low voice, "What's the matter?" Shouting so loudly outside. What a scandal! Indeed, Luan Yen was here today. Seeing such a thing, he did not know what to say later. Luan Yen originally did not want to care, but he was really curious, so he asked, "What is the Kangluo continent's crisis that you speak of? Is the sea going to drown Kangluo continent?" Herhard said in a low voice, "Sect master, This matter is extremely important. The fewer people who know, the better. Luan Yen laughed and shook his head. He was already so scared. Eternal Hatred's face also lost face. He said in a low voice, "If there's anything, report it. If there's nothing important, go to the law enforcement team to receive your punishment." Herhard had no other choice. He directly activated the black card in his hand, and a cloud rose. Everyone looked at the cloud, and gradually, an image began to appear. However, when the image really appeared, everyone was shocked. The entire sect hall was dead silent. Eternal Hatred and Luan Yen, as supremes, felt their scalps go numb when they saw the skeleton face. Their thoughts immediately returned to the battle 10 years ago. The two of them also participated in that battle. They were very clear about what this skeleton face represented. It was simply an existence that could destroy the heavens and earth. Back then, many supremes had fallen in order to kill all of them. It could be seen how powerful this group of people was. They did not expect to see it again after 10 years. Although there were many undead race in Kangluo continent, and although the shape of the face was different, it was not that different. The important thing was that the aura that this face emitted was exactly the same as the undead race back then. That arrogant demeanor, as if the people in front of it were all trash. The Dozong standing at the back was also shocked. Although they did not participate in that battle, they had heard of that world-destroying battle. It was even recorded in the history of Kangluo continent. Even now, when he was teaching his disciples, he would give an example. It was an epic ranked battle. "Close the door." Eternal Hatred reacted, and shouted in a low voice. The guards standing outside did not know what was happening inside, but they still closed the door. Luan Yen directly set up a barrier, because the following conversation was indeed very important. This kid did not lie. This matter was indeed related to the safety of Kangluo continent. The Dozong standing at the back also knew that this Herhard was really anxious. If such a big matter were to happen to him, he would probably be paralyzed with fear. Everyone continued to watch. After a long time, "You can't afford to offend my woman." Chapter 838. This skeleton seems to be different from the previous one. Luan Yan's face was dignified after looking at it. What he meant by different must be another aspect. "It's a little different." Eternal Hatred also nodded his head. However, the others were very confused. They couldn't understand what was different at all. Looking at the two supremes' expressions, it seemed that it was definitely different. Luan Yen faintly said, "The skeleton of that year would never do it himself." Eternal Hatred nodded his head. It seemed that Yihua's character was really seen through by these people. Yihua basically didn't do it himself. It was all his subordinates doing the work. But the death assassin did it himself. Just by looking at this point, one could tell that it was not the skeleton of that year. But the strength of this skeleton, I'm afraid it's close to the Supremes. Eternal Hatred said in a deep voice. This was not a good thing. That year, he didn't take it seriously and made a big mistake. When did this happen? Luan Yen also thought of this and hurriedly asked. Such a threat should be killed as soon as possible. He couldn't be allowed to grow, otherwise, the things of that year would repeat themselves. Mao Chong respectfully said, Sovereign, it may have been half an hour. What? Half an hour? How can you do things? Eternal Hatred shouted angrily. Half an hour. The others might have already run away. Mao Chong was also helpless. Sovereign, I ran all the way to the inner court and was stopped several times. This inner court is too outrageous. Eternal Hatred fiercely stared at the Dozongs behind him. The latter bowed their heads and said nothing. If they knew that this was the case, they definitely wouldn't stop them. Where is it? Eternal Hatred asked in a deep voice. In the barren land. Mao Chong respectfully said. Eternal Hatred waved his hand and all the people in the hall suddenly disappeared. It didn't take long for them to arrive at the side of the hut. However, at this time, the hut had already been set on fire. When Eternal Hatred and Luan Yen saw this, their faces turned black. If the information was faster and they weren't stopped, it would be great to kill the skeleton. However, this time, they let the skeleton run away. Search for it. Turn the whole barren land upside down for me. Find this damn skeleton and, also, completely block this news. If anyone dares to leak the news, then don't blame me, the Sovereign, for turning hostile. What Chong Hen did was not wrong. If this news was released, the entire southern Kangluo continent would be in an uproar. This kind of sensation was not that kind of sensation. It was a riot. It had happened in the past and many people had died. Harry! Eternal Hatred shouted in a deep voice. Master! I'll leave the search to your outer yard law enforcement team. The entire Meridian Break sect will cooperate fully. Eternal Hatred's words gave Hard Hair a lot of power. As the leader of the outer yard's law enforcement team, he could even command the inner yard. How cool would that be? Yes. Sect leader. This damned skeleton. He's really haunting me. Luan Yen murmured. Yi Hua, who was far away in the north, sneezed. Someone is definitely scolding me behind my back again. Could it be those old friends of mine? Yi Hua, you couldn't have caught a cold, right? Qingya asked with concern. Stretching out her hand, Yi Hua's forehead was slightly hot. Looking at Qingya's actions, Yi Hua shook his head. Qingya, when have you ever seen me catch a cold? Qing Yutong, who was at the side, was attracted by her own appearance and said, That's right, brother-in-law doesn't even cover himself with a quilt at night. How could he have caught a cold? Dong Huang Baiji asked confusedly, Doesn't cover himself with a quilt? Qing Yutong placed down the small mirror and laughed. Big sister Baiji, did brother-in-law cover himself with a quilt when he poked you? Dong Huang Baiji's face turned red. Even though they were currently sharing a quilt with each other, the Empress was still very shy. Qingya glared at her little sister. You sure know how to shoot your mouth off. Doji, who was serving at the side, also had her face turn red. Achoo! Yi Hua sneezed again. Master, are you all right? Doji asked with concern. Yi Hua felt that his head was buzzing because of that sneeze. I'm fine. Yi Hua shook his head. I feel a bit weird. I can't have really caught a cold, right? However, Qing Yutong suddenly cried out in surprise. Brother-in-law, your nose is flowing. Following Qing Yutong's shout, Qingya and Dong Huang Baiji looked over, and their eyebrows immediately wrinkled. Yi Hua stretched out his hand and touched his nose, and he was immediately stupefied. My nose is actually flowing. How is this possible? Could it really be because I didn't cover myself with a quilt? Achoo! Yi Hua suddenly sneezed again, and his entire body was sent flying by his own sneeze, and he crashed into the wall and got stuck. The four women were stupefied. Only after quite a while did they come back to their senses. Yi Hua! Brother-in-law! Master! The four women hurriedly pulled Yi Hua out, and they actually discovered that Yi Hua had fainted. Qingya hurriedly placed her hand on Yi Hua's forehead. So hot. It wasn't so hot just now. Brother-in-law really caught a cold, and he even had a high fever. How is this possible? Qing Yutong was astonished. Qing Yutong knew of brother-in-law's strength. He is basically an invincible existence, and yet, he actually caught a cold for no reason. Could it be that he really caught a cold because he didn't cover himself with a quilt at night? Qingya hurriedly carried Yi Hua into the house, then treated Yi Hua with Dong Huang Baiji. However, there was no effect. Although there was no effect, Yi Hua still woke up. He felt that his entire body wasn't good. His entire body was powerless, as if he was about to collapse. Main Supreme Overlord. What happened to Main Supreme Overlord? Yi Hua mumbled. Yi Hua, you caught a cold. Qingya's heart ached. She sat at the bedside and held onto Yi Hua's hand. This is the first time that I have seen Yi Hua being so weak. Impossible. How could I catch a cold? Yi Hua wouldn't believe that there would actually be a day where I would catch a cold. Dong Huang Baiji said gravely. Yi Hua, let's hurry back. Go back for what? Can this little bit of cold even stump me? You are truly indulging in fantasy. Yi Hua sat up, and he immediately felt that his head was dizzy. Damn it. Could it be that I really caught a cold? This is impossible. Brother-in-law, don't worry. Yutong has 4 seasons cold capsule and amoxicillin here. Fortunately, I prepared some when I came over. Qing Yutong hurriedly went to pour some water, then fed it to Yi Hua. Yi Hua was thinking in his heart, do I really use these medicines? Master, what happened to you? Is Daji able to help you? Daji asked anxiously at the side. As a maid, there was actually nothing that she could do when her master was sick. Dong Huang Baiji was still not at ease. Yi Hua, I will go and look for Wei Chong to come over and take a look at you. Before Yihua could say anything, Donghuang Baiji had already disappeared. In actuality, Yihua wanted to say, "There is no need for that. I will just call for him and he will come over." Not long later, Wei Chong came over. Yihua immediately sent a private message to Wei Chong. Chapter 839. Madams, please wait outside. Wei Chong said respectfully. Qingya and the others nodded their heads, then walked out of the room. Your Honor, why don't you change into your original form and give it a try? Wei Chong was also very puzzled. It shouldn't be possible for me to catch a cold. Yihua could only give it a try, and thus, he transformed back into his true form on the bed. All the negative feelings disappeared. Your Honor, how do you feel? Wei Chong asked curiously. I'm fine. Yihua was also very puzzled. Immediately, he returned back to his human form, and an uncomfortable feeling assaulted his chest. Yihua asked coldly, Wei Chong, take a look at what is wrong with me. My head hurts. Your Honor, do you sleep with a blanket at night? Wei Chong stood at the bedside and asked respectfully. What the F***ck? What the hell does this have to do with the lid? Yihua was about to faint. Do I need to cover myself with a blanket when I am making love with my wives? If word of this were to spread out, I would be laughed at by others. Wei Chong solemnly nodded his head. Of course it's related, people sleep with blankets. Yihua was actually left speechless. Furthermore, Your Honor, I'm afraid that you are suffering from a viral cold. Wei Chong said gravely, seemingly as if his illness was very serious. Yihua, don't talk so much useless stuff, hurry up and treat me. After Yihua finished speaking, he felt that something was wrong. I have medicine with me. I just have to take the medicine and I will be fine. He quickly took out a handful of chocolate-like pills and stuffed them into his mouth. After a long while. Your Honor, are you feeling better? Good my ass, why is it getting more and more dizzy and getting colder and colder? Yihua seemed to be too confident in his own body, and just like that, he gulped down a bunch of medicine. Your Honor, there is a conflict between medicine and medicine, you can't just take medicine like that. Then why didn't you warn me just now? Before subordinate could finish speaking, His Honor had already swallowed it. Yihua really wants to die. I should hurry up and return back to my original form. I feel much more comfortable now, all of my illnesses are gone. Just what is going on here? Yihua stretched out his hand and took a look at the finger. The finger is really long and slender. Wei Chong, who was at the side, bowed down and said, Your Honor, the human body is very strange. Take Xiaofan for example, even though he is already very strong, his period still comes on time every month. After hearing what Wei Chong said, Yihua felt that what Wei Chong said was true. Qingya and the others' period would come too. Your Honor, what you need to do right now is to have a good rest, drink more hot water, and remember to cover yourself with the blanket when you sleep at night. Damn it! Cover yourself with the quilt. Yihua said fiercely. Qingya's voice suddenly rang out from outside the door. Yihua, we have come in. Yihua, who was on the bed, hurriedly changed back to his human form. I still can't let them see my human form. If they were to see it, they would probably faint from fright. Ladies! Wei Chong shouted out respectfully. Soon after, he looked towards Daji and was a little puzzled. Why is there another woman beside His Honor? It has only been a few days since His Honor left, and this woman is really fast. As expected of His Honor, he is very good at picking up girls. Furthermore, this woman's appearance is actually on par with the madam's. Unimaginable. Wei Chong, how is Yihua? Donghuang Baiji asked hurriedly. Madam, His Honor is suddenly feeling hot and cold. It should be the symptoms of a cold. In the future, His Honor should drink more hot water, and when you sleep at night, you have to cover yourself with a blanket. When Yihua, who was lying on the bed, heard the word blanket, he got angry. I will catch a cold if I don't have a blanket? Who made the rules? Achoo! Yihua suddenly sneezed again, and immediately, he felt dizzy and disoriented. Until now, Yihua still didn't dare to believe that he had caught a cold. Originally, Yihua only had a small cold, but because he took the medicine too quickly, the cold became even more serious. Is this the only way? Looking at how weak her brother-in-law was, Qing Yutong felt her heart ache. It was as if a giant had collapsed in an instant. Wei Chong nodded his head. Ladies, please don't worry, his honor is only suffering from a small illness, he will definitely be able to recover. Although they knew that Yi Hua would recover, Qingya and the others were still worried. After all, Yi Hua had never caught a cold before. If there is nothing else, subordinate will be leaving first. His honor, have a good rest, remember to cover yourself with the quilt. Yi Hua. So what if I don't cover myself with the quilt? I am invincible, so what if I don't cover myself with the quilt? Damn it, so cold. Yi Hua immediately hugged onto the quilt tightly and hid within the quilt while shivering. Damn it, it's so hot. Yi Hua immediately opened up the quilt. Out of the medicine that Yi Hua took just now, there were two medicine that were ice and fire medicine. One of them was called Vital Yang Foundation Pill. Just from the name, one could tell that it was a medicine that belonged to the fire attribute, and it specialized in treating cold-type injuries. There was also another one called North Pole Qi Enhancement Pill. As the name implied, it specialized in treating fire attribute injuries. However, these two medicine were made by a high-level overlord, and the medicinal power of the medicine was rather strong. Yi Hua's physical body wasn't very strong, but if he were to take the medicine like this, he would definitely have a problem. Furthermore, Yi Hua had just grabbed a bunch of the medicine that he took out just like eating beans. Right now, his entire body was moving up and down. So cold. Wife, hurry up and warm me up. Yi Hua mumbled while lying on the bed. Her husband was already sick to such an extent. As a wife, she naturally couldn't just stand by the side and watch. Thus, all of them took off their clothes and got onto the bed, squeezed Yi Hua tightly in the middle, and used the temperature of their bodies to warm Yi Hua's body. If it was in the past, Yi Hua would definitely be very excited and immediately get into bed with them. But right now, damn it, it's so cold. Daji, who was standing at the side, was very gloomy. Her master has caught a cold, and I am unable to help him at all. I can only stand at the side and watch. Yi Hua, are you feeling a bit better? Dong Huang Baiji said with heartache. That's right. Are you feeling a bit better? Qingya didn't expect that the giant in her heart would fall one day. Brother-in-law, Yutong will warm your hands for you. Yi Hua was very helpless right now. You all should hurry up and leave. I, the Supreme Overlord, will just change back to my original body. This damnable body, after so many years, I actually caught a cold. Yi Hua, how about we go back and rest? This place isn't convenient either. Dong Huang Baiji still felt that if they were to go back, Wuxia Empire would be a lot more uncomfortable. Yi Hua didn't want to go back right now. After all, I still don't know what those people are looking for. No. There's no need for that. I will be fine after resting for a day. Yi Hua's eyes seemed to be on the verge of not being able to open anymore. I am so tired. I really want to sleep. While talking, Yi Hua really fell asleep. The three women looked at each other and sighed lightly. Soon after, they tightly hugged onto the man in their embrace. It would be good if they could let him feel a bit of warmth. At the same time, they also had to cover themselves with a blanket so that they wouldn't catch a cold, especially during winter. On the other side, 3 Despair Palaces Huayang had already arrived at a restaurant. For something like this to happen, my teacher will definitely come over to question me. The main point is that I angered an emperor to death, and 3 Despair Palaces' reputation will be tarnished. Sitting on a wooden stool, Huayang drank his tea mouthful by mouthful. It's just that the mission that Master gave me. Is that strange flame really in the Azure Dragon Empire? Chapter 840. This time, Chu Yuxuan and Huayang's mission was to find strange flames. The two of them could only be considered the vanguard. After all, strange flames were not ordinary treasures. They were super rare. In order to not alert the enemy, they sent the two of them to scout ahead to see if they could find anything. To find a heavenly flame, one needed luck and fate. Huayang, who was deep in thought, did not notice that someone was beside him. Huayang. A man shrouded in a black robe said. Hearing this voice, Huayang's expression changed. He knelt down on one knee and shouted, Master! The man in the black robe took off his hat, revealing a common face. He looked ordinary, like a passerby walking on the street. I heard that you angered the Emperor of the Azure Dragon Empire to death? Henry sat at the side and poured himself a cup of normal tea. He blew at the steam and frowned as he took a sip. Huayang quickly lowered his head, his face full of fear. Master, I had no choice. Henry looked at his disciple and chuckled. Huayang, Master doesn't blame you for angering the emperor to death. One emperor is nothing. What's important is that you defeated Chu Yuxuan of the benevolent king prison. Is that true? I don't know, but I let him escape in the end. Huayang did not mention the possession. In the past, it was Chu Yuxuan who defeated him. Although he was suspected to have cheated this time, at least he defeated him. No matter what method he used, his reputation would be better. Henry patted Huayang's shoulder. It's okay. Regardless of whether Chu Yuxuan died or not, you still brought shame to 3 Absolute Palace. But Master, angering the emperor to death? It seems to have aroused public anger. Huayang said worriedly. Right now, the entire Azure Dragon Empire was saying that he angered the emperor to death. Some children even made up a song and sang it. Don't worry, the palace master has his own arrangements. What's a small Azure Dragon Empire? 3 Absolute Palace can destroy it with a flick of their fingers. Don't take such a small matter to heart and don't feel burdened. You didn't kill the emperor anyway. You'll just be a laughingstock if you die from anger. Hearing his master's words, Huayang felt a little better. It was just that the emperor was too weak. He was angered to death over such a small matter. It had nothing to do with him. Master, I don't have a single clue as to where the deviant flame is. Henry's face did not reveal any disappointment as he asked. When you were searching, did you encounter any other forces? Other than the benevolent king prison, there are no other forces. Huayang seemed to have understood something. His mission this time was not to find the mystical flame, but to scout and see how many forces were coming. Moreover, the heavenly flame was such an important thing, how could he let him know about it? The Temple Master is determined to get the mystical flame this time. In the entire Kangluo continent, only the Divine Academy and the Meridian Break sect have the mystical flame. There isn't a single force in the entire north that has a treasure like the mystical flame. Therefore, we must get the mystical flame this time. Then, our 3 Absolute Palace will become the most powerful force in the entire north, even on par with the great forces like the Meridian Break sect and the Divine Academy. When Henry said these words, he was filled with excitement. He was fighting for the northern side and not letting the 2 factions in the south dominate the world. Master, that kind of day is coming soon. Huayang's face was also filled with excitement. As long as he got the mystical flame, the Temple Master would become the overlord of the north, and 3 Absolute Palace would be able to expand endlessly. Henry nodded his head and put away his excited expression. The most important task now is to find the mystical flame. Master, where is the mystical flame? Huayang asked curiously. You will know when the time comes, Henry said indifferently. And Huayang felt that even his master didn't know where the mystical flame was. The benevolent king prison was located to the west of Aluo River. This place was gray in color, as if it was the wreckage left behind by the end of the world. There was a huge volcano that was flowing with magma, and the benevolent king prison was located around the volcano. The magma flowed outside the house like seawater. The surrounding temperature was also a lot higher than normal areas, but it was under this kind of high temperature that countless outstanding disciples were nurtured. On top of the volcano, a bright red palace floated in the air, giving off a strange aura. Prison Emperor, the prison warden Chu that we sent was defeated by 3 Absolute Palaces. Huayang. His whereabouts are unknown. Below the prison emperor were 8 prison kings, and below them were 36 prison wardens. As the prison emperor, his strength was at the peak of the Do Zong stage, and he was only 1 step away from the Do Di stage. The 8 prison kings were all at the peak of the Do Huang stage, and they were only 1 step away from the Do Zong stage. The prison emperor who was sitting cross-legged on the high platform was an old man. He didn't turn into a young man, but used his age to remind himself that time was of the essence, and he had to train harder. Standing below him were the 8 prison kings, and the one who spoke just now was one of them. He was also Chu Yuxuan's master, Guang Yu Tang. Chu Yuxuan is a good seedling. We must find him. Prison Emperor Yang Yao said, but his eyes didn't open. Yes, Prison Emperor. The 8 prison kings replied respectfully. At this moment, Prison Emperor Yang Yao spoke again. How did the 3 Absolute Palace find out about the appearance of the mystical flame this time? We must get to the bottom of this matter. I don't want to see a traitor appear among you all. Following the prison emperor's words, the 8 prison kings immediately knelt on the ground and shouted, Subordinates are absolutely loyal to the prison emperor. That's great. The appearance of the mystical flame is imminent. I only need one word. The 8 prison kings shouted in unison, "Kill!" However, the prison emperor opened his eyes, and it was truly captivating. It's to snatch. The 8 prison kings were stunned for a moment, and they felt a little awkward. Subordinate obeys. Everyone, go and prepare. 3 Absolute Palace is also preparing. This battle cannot be underestimated. Subordinate obeys. The 8 prison kings received the order and went to make arrangements, while Yang Yao slowly stood up and muttered, "Luckily there is only 3 Absolute Palace. If there were a few more, it would be even more troublesome." Suddenly, Yang Yao stretched out his palm, as if he was summoning his weapon. The magma in the volcano began to surge slightly, and then it became bigger and bigger. Puff! A weapon that was completely covered in magma rushed into the sky, and as the magma fell, it revealed its original form. It was an tomb spike, and from the aura that it was emitting, it was most likely a prehistoric godly item, and from the brilliance that it was emitting, it must have been refined at least twice. Whether or not we can snatch the mystical flame this time, it will all depend on you. Following Yang Yao's words, the tomb spike in the sky immediately flew back, and Yang Yao stretched out his arm. The entire tomb spike covered Yang Yao's arm, and it looked like a pair of gauntlets, but who knew that it was actually a prehistoric godly item? End of this chapter. Chapter 841. Yihua actually had a lot of high-grade weapons, but it was a pity that these high-grade weapons had not been tempered before. However, as a high-grade weapon, even if it was not tempered, its might was still quite great. After being tempered, it would be even better. However, if one wanted to temper a weapon, one had to be mentally prepared, because when tempering a weapon, the weapon could explode and disappear at any time. After all, the success rate was very high. Yang Yao's primordial godly weapon had been tempered twice, and it could be seen that he was also a person who took risks. After all, if he was not careful, this primordial godly weapon might shatter, and that would be the sound of his heart shattering. Right now, Yang Yao had started the 3rd tempering. He placed it in the magma to make the tomb spike more sturdy. However, if what he was holding was a primordial godly weapon, Yang Yao wouldn't dare to temper it like this. After all, primordial godly weapons were very rare, and there weren't many of them in the entire Kangluo continent. The war surrounding the Azure Dragon Empire was about to start, and the people living in the Azure Dragon Empire all felt a stifling atmosphere. However, Yihua, who caught a cold, was a bit miserable. For the past few days, Yihua had been wrapping himself with a blanket when he got out of bed, and he was feeling very dizzy. Qing Ya's 3 wives felt very distressed when they saw Yihua. The 3 wives and a maid were taking care of Yihua every single day. However, Yihua felt that he shouldn't have caught a cold. Rather, it was a kind of indescribable feeling, as if something was calling out to him. The 10+ types of deviant flames in his body were also very excited, as if they were waiting for their little brother. Towards this kind of feeling, Yihua didn't know how to explain it. The deviant flames in his body had always been very calm, and it was only recently that they became a bit restless. Yihua felt that his cold was caused by these deviant flames. After all, the fierceness of deviant flames shocked even Yihua. Just like the fire that Ali released in Voidless Realm, that fire was completely unextinguishable, and even Yihua was unable to stop the fire from burning. If Yihua were to say what weapon was the most overpowered in the world, Yihua would say without hesitation, and that would be deviant flames. Back then, most of the overlords who besieged me had deviant flames, but there were also some who didn't. At that time, I only had one type of deviant flame, and only after I reincarnated did I realize that all of their deviant flames were duplicated by me. Qingya Baiji, help me out for a walk. Right now, even Yihua's tone had changed a bit. He was a bit annoyed by the flames, and his physical body was completely unable to endure the flames messing around with him. Donghuang Baiji held onto the bowl of millet porridge and said tenderly, "Yihua, what you need to do right now is to rest properly." "Yes, brother-in-law. What if you go out and get blown by the wind and catch a cold?" Ever since Yihua fell sick, Qing Yutong finally had the appearance of a wife. "This isn't a cold. I think that I have already found the reason," Yihua said lightly, then carried the blanket and got off the bed. Nowadays, he really had to cover himself with a blanket wherever he went. Qingya and Donghuang Baiji hurriedly held on to Daji. Daji, who was following behind the crowd, realized that she was unable to help at all and felt very guilty. Everyone came to the pavilion outside, and Yi Hua shivered. Daji hurriedly burned some charcoal to warm her master up. How is the Azure Dragon Empire recently? Yi Hua felt that he had already been lying on the bed for 4 to 5 days, and he didn't know what was going on outside. Qing Yutong, who was sitting at the side, said lightly, "Brother-in-law, recently, a lot of people have appeared in the city. I heard from others that they are people from 3 Absolute Palace and King Ren Prison. Furthermore, the day of the Emperor's funeral is coming soon." Right now, Yi Hua finally knew that what 3 Absolute Palace and King Ren Prison were fighting over was most likely the deviant fire. The deviant fire in my body is definitely attracting the deviant fire, just like how it is seeking a mate, which is why my body ended up like this. Only Yi Hua would dare to play with more than 10 different deviant fires in his body. If he was unable to control the deviant fire, he would end up self-destructing, which was very dangerous. Looking at her husband's pensive look, Qingya asked curiously, "Yi Hua, did you discover something?" Yi Hua didn't say anything and stretched out his index finger, and a purple flame appeared on his finger. "This is firmament ghost fire. It is a type of deviant fire," Yi Hua said faintly, and the purple flame danced on his finger as if it had a life of its own. Looking at the flame on Yi Hua's hand, Qingya, Donghuang Baiji, and Qing Yutong's reaction was very normal, because the 4 children all knew how to use deviant fire. Among them, Donghuang Li was very good at using deviant fire. She was simply even better at using deviant fire than her own father. However, when Daji saw the deviant fire on her master's hand, her beautiful eyes became astonished. Master actually possesses a thing like deviant fire. He is truly formidable. As expected of my master, he is ridiculously formidable. If Daji were to find out that her master possesses more than 10 types of deviant fire, I wonder how shocked she would be. "What does this have to do with you catching a cold?" Donghuang Baiji asked curiously. Yi Hua kept the firmament ghost fire and said faintly, "These deviant fires are very powerful, powerful to the point that it is unimaginable. Back then, Ali burned down a mountain in Voidless Realm, and that can only be said to be Voidless Realm's luck, as not all of the mountains were burned down. Every type of deviant fire has its own unique effect, and they are also able to attract each other, just like what is happening right now." Donghuang Baiji immediately understood. "Yi Hua, you are saying that there is a type of deviant fire that is currently summoning you?" Yi Hua shook his head. "It is not the deviant fire that is summoning me, it is the deviant fire within my body that is summoning me. That is why the deviant fire within my body seems to be a bit restless, causing me to catch a cold." To be honest, Yi Hua still had some thoughts about the deviant fire. After all, the rarity of deviant fire was just that. Back then, I only have one type of firmament ghost fire, and with just that one type of deviant fire I fought from beginning to end. From this, it could be seen just how ferocious the deviant fire is. If not for the fact that the other party has a lot of deviant fires, how could I possibly lose? What kind of joke is this? Qing Yutong nodded her head and said, "I understand, those 2 powers are here for the deviant fire. It is going to be soon, within these few days, the deviant fire is going to appear." Yi Hua said in a low voice, and couldn't help but shiver. "So cold. It must be that deviant fire that got excited just now, and it caused me to freeze. Then, should we make some preparations? After all, there are 2 powers that are here to fight over the deviant fire." Qingya said worriedly. "If a battle were to start, we definitely wouldn't be able to take care of Yi Hua." Yi Hua already had a plan in his heart, and he said lightly, "It's fine this time, even if we don't fight, we will still be able to get the deviant fire." "Could it be that the deviant fire is able to fly towards you on its own?" Donghuang Baiji asked curiously. Yi Hua squeezed out a trace of a smile, then said lightly, "Could it be that there are other places for the deviant fire to go? I'm just curious, what kind of ability does the deviant fire have this time, to actually be able to cause the deviant fire within my body to become so restless? I am a bit looking forward to it." Although Yi Hua said that, Qingya still asked with concern, "Yi Hua, are you sure that your body is fine? Nothing bad will happen to you, right?" End of this chapter. Chapter 842. Qingya, don't worry, I am very clear about the condition of my body. Let us wait for the appearance of the abnormal flame," Yi Hua said slowly. The abnormal flame in his body was getting happier and happier. Is this meeting a big sister or a big brother? Yihua didn't know. Big brother ? Are you feeling better? At this moment, Wan Yi walked over with a bag on his back and asked with concern. He was also very curious. Big brother ? Actually caught a cold? This is too fake. Ever since I started cultivating, I have forgotten what a cold is. Yihua took a look at Wan Yi and felt very helpless. My main body actually has this kind of appearance, and it was even seen by others. He is much better. Wan Yi, where are you planning to go? Qingya asked curiously. Wan Yi dressed up as if he was going to go somewhere far away. Wan Yi had also thought clearly in these few days that staying here was not a solution. A real man should travel around the world and become stronger through experience. I am planning to go out. My parents have already asked them to go to northern Liang, which is the Wuxia Empire that brother ? mentioned. Hearing that Wan Yi was planning to go out to train, Yihua thought highly of him. After all, he was much better than those who only know how to eat and wait for death at home. Thus when Yihua stood up, Qing Yutong who was at the side hurriedly held on to Yihua and patted on Wan Yi's shoulder. Training is something that every man has to go through. I hope that the next time I see you, you will be able to achieve something. I am also staying at Wuxia Empire. Being said by brother ? Wan Yi felt very energetic. Brother ? You can be at ease. If I don't become famous, I will not return. Hearing Wan Yi's words, Yihua laughed lightly. Be careful on your way back. Wan Yi nodded his head, then cupped his hands towards everyone and said, Brother ? Big sister ? I won't accompany you all anymore. Goodbye everyone. Goodbye. Qingya and the others said with a smile. Wan Yi took a deep breath, then turned around and left the empire that he had lived in for more than 10 years to start his new life. After Wan Yi left, Donghuang Baiji laughed. Didn't you all notice? Our Yihua has changed a lot. Following Donghuang Baiji's words, Qingya and Qing Yutong both felt it. In the past, Yihua's face was like an ice block, and he basically didn't smile when he saw others. Look at him now, he actually encouraged others. This is such a good change. He has become more and more like a human. Why do I have to use this to describe him? This is so strange. Could it be that Yihua doesn't look like a human? After hearing that, Yihua said faintly, humans need to change. We can't always live in the present. If not, how different would we be from a salted fish? This sentence was approved by Qingya and the others. Change requires courage, just like Wan Yi, who had lived here for so many years. Now that he decided to leave, he also needed courage to bid farewell to his past life. That's right. The day of the emperor's funeral soon arrived. The whole city mourned, and white scarves were hung everywhere. The imperial palace had also set up temporary palaces, and the restoration work was slowly progressing. Within the imperial palace, a final ceremony was being held. Gu Haoren stood at the very front, wearing his imperial robe and crown, weeping so loudly that it shook heaven and earth. Even though he was crying and looked very weak, some of the ministers felt that this was how a filial son should be. He was crying so loudly, crying because of the death of the late emperor. Wuxia, who was standing below, laughed coldly. He really knew how to act like a filial son. In his heart, he could not wait for his father to die. The ceremony still had to continue, and only when the auspicious time was right would they be able to leave and be buried in the imperial mausoleum. At this moment, in an unremarkable restaurant, an old man and a young man were sitting. The old man was the prison emperor of the benevolent king prison, Yang Yao. The young man beside him looked elegant, but in actuality, he was also an expert at the peak of the Dozong realm. He was the palace master of the 3 absolute palace, Shi Yu. Right now, the 2 big shots seemed to be doing their final negotiation. As long as they didn't reach an agreement, there was no way to start a war. For the sake of the mystical fire, the 2 huge powers had used up all of their resources. Prison Emperor, long time no see. You have gotten older again, and you have lost even more hair. I am really worried that you will become bald. Shi Yu lightly waved his folding fan and said with a smile. If Yang Yao wanted to, he could also turn into his younger appearance, but there was no need for that. Everyone had their own ambitions. At least it is better than you pretending to be young. Yang Yao said faintly. This Shi Yu is even older than me, and he actually turned into the appearance of a young man. I wonder how the word shame is written. Hearing Yang Yao's mockery, Shiryu closed the folding fan in his hand. He hated people saying that he was old the most. Wasn't pretending to be young mocking him for being old? Damn the benevolent king prison. Why doesn't that volcano erupt and burn everyone to death? Only my 3 absolute palace can rule the Aluo River. Shiryu seemed to have thought of something and opened his folding fan with a smile. That Warden Chu of yours is only a... He was beaten up by my disciple and ran away in the end. That's really unacceptable. Do the disciples of the benevolent king prison only know how to run? You are flaunting your prowess here after winning once. If Warden Chu won in the past, wouldn't I be able to step on your face? Yang Yao was very good at talking. Shiryu seemed to be no match for him at all. Seeing that Shiryu was speechless, Yang Yao said again, Your disciple angered the emperor of the Azure Dragon Empire to death. Today is the emperor's funeral. You should at least bring some people to pay your respects. This will show that your 3 absolute palace is magnanimous. Yang Yao! Shiryu shouted softly. He was the palace master of the 3 absolute palace. How could he be asked to pay respects to an emperor? What a joke! Since ancient times, those who win the hearts of the people rule the world. Your 3 absolute palace doesn't have a good reputation now. Yang Yao, don't talk so much nonsense. I want this heavenly flame. Name your conditions. As long as I have it, you can take it. Shiryu proposed a very good condition. However, nothing could be compared to the heavenly flame. Not even a chaos divine weapon could compare. Moreover, after obtaining the heavenly flame, anything could come. There was no need to worry about not having good treasures. More importantly, both of them wanted to rely on the heavenly flame to break through to the Emperor Do. This was because the peak of the Do Zone realm was too difficult to break through. Without an opportunity, it was impossible to break through the bottleneck. Yang Yao laughed softly and knocked on a melon seed. He said indifferently, How about this? You leave and you can take whatever you want from my benevolent king prison. Yang Yao, you know the importance of the heavenly flame even without me telling you. Shiryu said with a calm face. Of course, those who win the heavenly flame rule the world. In the entire Kangluo continent, only the Broken Meridian sect and the Shen Academy have the heavenly flame. I, Yang Yao, will be the 3rd person to obtain the heavenly flame. I will lead the entire north. Shiryu sighed and said in a low voice, Yang Yao, aren't you afraid that the people from the Yuanyang prefecture will come and snatch it? Speaking of the Yuanyang prefecture, Yang Yao became silent. End of this chapter. Chapter 843. This Yuanyang mansion was located to the south of the Aluo River. Of course, it was still considered to be in the north. However, the Yuanyang mansion was very powerful. Its mansion chief was a Do Di. How terrifying. Even the 3 absolute palace and the benevolent king prison combined were no match for them in terms of overall strength. Fortunately, Yuanyang mansion was very far away from Aluo River, so they wouldn't know what was happening here. Therefore, Yang Yao wasn't too worried about the people of Yuanyang mansion getting involved. Shiryu, you don't have to scare me with Yuanyang prefecture's people. As long as I get the mystical flame, Yuanyang prefecture's people are nothing. Yang Yao's words might appear arrogant, but what he said was the truth. Yang Yao could rely on the heavenly flame to break through to the Do Di class by obtaining it. A Do Di with a heavenly flame and a Do Di without a heavenly flame were 2 different things. Shiryu chuckled after listening, as if laughing at Yang Yao's naivety. Yang Yao, the birth of the mystical flame is such a big thing. How could the people of Yuanyang Palace not know about it? Even if they knew, they wouldn't dare to come out now. Then, have you ever thought that when we are fighting each other to the death, people from the Primal Yang Palace will show up and reap the benefits? Shiryu's consideration was very thorough. After all, this was a big matter, and he couldn't let others take advantage of it. After hearing Shiryu's words, Yang Yao fell into deep thought. After a long time he asked, You seem to have a better idea? That's right. Something like a heavenly flame has a lot of potential. Even a sovereign would want to possess one, let alone the 2 of us. So, let's not talk about those empty words. Since we've called people from both sides over, let's just fight for it with our own strength. The one who gets the heavenly flame will be left to fate. Sure, you paused for a moment. But as long as the people from Yuanyang Palace show up, we have to stop and unite against them. What do you say? Yang Yao frowned. His wrinkled face looked dull and alert. How can I trust you? Yang Yao asked in a deep voice. Believe? Do you think we can defeat Yuanyang Prefecture by ourselves? Yang Yao took a deep breath. Before Yuanyang Manor comes, we'll fight for it with our own strength. But when Yuanyang Manor comes, we'll kill them. We can only kill them. Otherwise, we'll be the ones to die. Shi Yu's words were not without reason. There had always been deaths in the fight for heavenly flames, and there were quite a few of them. Yang Yao and Shi Yu both hoped that there wouldn't be a third faction in the fight for the heavenly flame. This was the best outcome. As for the ownership of the heavenly flame, that would depend on one's strength. The two of them took a sip of tea at the same time and turned to leave. Meanwhile, in Wan residence, Yi Hua was actually sitting on a wooden wheelchair. His body was covered with a thick blanket, and Daji was pushing the wheelchair from behind. Right now it was noon, and the sun was high up in the sky. However, Yi Hua was so cold that he was shivering, and even his lips were trembling. The 10+ types of deviant flames within Yi Hua's body were becoming more and more irritable. Yi Hua didn't even know why they were becoming irritable. Do they want to reunite with each other, or do they want to kill each other? Yi Hua, are you all right? Qingya asked concernedly as she stretched out her hand and touched Yi Hua's forehead. Yi Hua's forehead is ice cold, and when I touched it just now, it was still boiling hot. Yi Hua swallowed his saliva. That strange flame should be coming out soon. I can feel it. Brother-in-law, in that case, are we just going to sit here like this and not go and snatch it? Qing Yutong asked curiously. Dong Huang Baiji said tenderly. Yutong, do you still not understand your brother-in-law? He isn't someone who takes the initiative to attack. Qing Yutong spread out her hands. That's true, brother-in-law usually doesn't take the initiative to attack, because brother-in-law wants to act cool. Yutong, wait for me to recover, I will spank your butt. Yi Hua said in a low voice, and even his voice was trembling. Yi Hua's voice was trembling because of the cold. Tisk, tsk, tisk. Qing Yutong made a face, then ran to the garden in the center and started dancing. Qing Yutong was a celebrity. What kind of dance doesn't she know? Her dance of this folk dance was very good. Yi Hua looked at Qing Yutong who was dancing, then waved his hand. Peach blossoms descended from the sky, and in an instant, the scene was extremely beautiful. Qing Ya and Dong Huang Baiji revealed a smile on their faces. Yutong has grown up, she knows how to dance for men. In actuality, Daji also wanted to go up and dance for a bit, but since the madam was already dancing, I won't be able to go up. If I were to go up, I would have to blame myself for not following the rules and stealing the limelight from the madam. I didn't expect that Yutong would know how to dance. Yi Hua laughed lightly, then hugged onto the blanket tightly. I am freezing to death. Qing Ya and Dong Huang Baiji took a glance at each other, then walked up to the blanket. The three women suddenly changed into a pink dance dress, and at the same time, they got into a pose. Yi Hua gradually sat up straight. This is the first time that I have seen the three of them dancing together, and furthermore, they are so neat. How can every frown and every smile of theirs be so beautiful? The thing that I, the Supreme Overlord, regret the least in my entire life is marrying 3 wives like this. After the dance finished, Qingya asked, Yi Hua, was it nice? Good. Very good. This is great. Yi Hua said, good, 3 times in a row. From this, it could be seen that he was truly happy. And upon hearing Yi Hua's praise, the 3 wives were rather happy as well. After all, it has been a long time since they last heard their husbands praise them. Seeing Yi Hua's smile appearing on his face once again, the 3 wives felt very comfortable. In order to make their husbands smile, they had to put in a lot of effort. The few came to the pavilion. Daji brewed tea, while Yi Hua and the others sat at the side, waiting for the deviant fire to appear. Yi Hua, how much longer do you need? Dong Huang Baiji asked curiously. Soon. Dong dong dong. Right after Yi Hua finished speaking, the entire Azure Dragon Empire's bell rang out. This was the bell that signified that the emperor was going to be buried. At the Imperial Mausoleum in the southern suburbs, the Imperial Mausoleum had already been repaired long ago. Gu Pai had also properly arranged his own funeral matters. Right now, the imperial mausoleum was filled with crying sounds. However, it wasn't Gu Haoran who was crying. It was the emperor's concubines who were crying. Only the empress didn't need to be buried with the emperor. The rest of the concubines had to be buried with the emperor. What a cruel rule. A living person had to walk into an incomparably dark tomb and then wait for death or even drive himself crazy. The auspicious time has arrived. Let's begin the burial. Following the eunuch's duck cry, the entourage slowly walked into the tomb. A few of those concubines fainted, but very quickly, they were carried into the tomb. However, the imperial family had its own rules. They entered the palace to enjoy life, and they should have long known that such a day would come. The entire imperial mausoleum was constructed very well, to the point that it was almost the same as the emperor's bedroom. If one had enough food, living in the imperial mausoleum would be no different from living in the imperial palace. Over 10 soldiers carried the emperor's coffin and placed it at the center of the tomb. Gu Haoran let out a breath. After kowtowing, everything is finally settled. Ladies and concubines, it has been hard on you all to accompany father. I hope that you all can live happily on the other side. Gu Haoran said to the concubines. I beg of you, please let us off, we don't want to be buried with father. End of this chapter. Chapter 844. Your Majesty, please let us go. I don't want to die. I also don't want to die, Your Majesty. Most of these imperial concubines were young, beautiful, and in the prime of their lives. Some had only been in the palace for a year or even a month. There were even some who had not been favored. Who would be willing to be buried with them in such a muddled way? Men, Gu Haoran called out calmly. A few soldiers immediately dragged these women to the side and used the scabbards in their hands to beat them up. After that, none of the concubines dared to call for help. You were my father's women when you were alive, and you will be my father's women after you are dead. You should feel honored that you are blessed by the heavens, not desolation and grief. Gu Haoran shouted loudly. The rules set down by the ancestors could not be broken. After all, if the emperor died, could it be that these imperial concubines would all be disbanded? And then slept with another man? As the emperor, thoughts were tyrannical. As long as he died, everything would be buried with him. Seal the tomb, Gu Haoran shouted. He couldn't wait to go back and become the emperor. Your Majesty. Zhang Jing, who was standing at the side, suddenly shouted. Gu Haoran trusted Zhang Jing. What's wrong? Emperor? What does that light mean? Zhang Jing pointed at a light source that was gradually tilting. Gu Haoran paused for a moment before saying, it should be father's idea. This light source should have been dug in and moved along with the sun. From this angle, it should have moved to the coffin. Father still wants to feel the warmth of the sun. After saying that, Gu Haoran laughed. His father really knew how to enjoy life. Even though he was dead, he still wanted to bask in the sun. Zhang Jing nodded. Gu Haoran took the lead and walked out, followed by a group of soldiers, leaving behind a group of absent-minded women to be buried with them. As the heavy stone door closed, the tomb chamber fell into silence. Only the cries of hundreds of concubines could be heard. However, there were a few concubines who were looking at that ray of sunlight that was slowly moving from the wall to the side of the coffin. When the beam of light moved to the center of the room, it suddenly refracted. There was a mirror in the center of the coffin, and the light shone through the tomb. The bronze mirrors around the coffin seemed to be a strange array, and it actually caused a strange pattern to appear on the light. This situation stunned the concubines. What was going on? Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, the sound of a stone door opening could be heard. This caused all the concubines to be stunned for a moment, then they all rushed towards the stone door. However, there were still more than 10 concubines who didn't go. They just sat there in a daze. These concubines were a little old, and they probably couldn't bear to part with him. They had feelings for him, and those who ran out were all young concubines. The stone door closed without any warning, and a series of terrifying sounds rang out, as well as a woman's miserable cries. The remaining dozen or so concubines instantly understood what the emperor meant, because another stone door opened on the other side. When the stone door opened, a ray of light shone in, illuminating the pitch-black passageway. Beside the passageway, there were the emperor's words. The meaning was simple: I don't want you to die with me. You should have your own brand new life. As for what happened just now, it was just a small test. Gu Pai wasn't a cruel emperor. Those were all women that he had slept with before, and he couldn't bear to let them die just like that. However, he couldn't break the rules. Thus, he thought of this method to see how many of those women were sincere. Only those who were sincere would have the chance to live. The dozen or so concubines kowtowed towards the coffin and thanked the emperor for his kindness. Soon after, they walked out of the tomb. However, there were still 2 concubines who didn't leave. They chose to stay here and guard the coffin. Gradually, the stone door closed. The entire tomb became silent once again, and the atmosphere was filled with the aura of death. However, right at this moment, a bronze mirror suddenly fell, and the clanging sound startled the 2 concubines. However, at this moment, the light source changed. A dragon head was carved on the top of the coffin, and the light source just so happened to shoot into the dragon's eyes. The dragon's eyes gradually lit up, and the rocks on the dragon's head gradually fell off. This startled the 2 concubines. How did the stone dragon come back to life? Roar! A dragon roar suddenly exploded out in the tomb. However, when the group that was returning to the city heard this dragon roar, they all stopped their footsteps. Gu Haoran, who was sitting on the throne, asked loudly, "Zhang Jing, what's going on?" "Your Majesty, a dragon roar seemed to have come out from the imperial tomb just now." Even Zhang Jing felt as if his ears were ringing. Gu Haoran hurriedly got off the carriage and looked towards the imperial tomb that was not far away. Boom! The top of the imperial tomb could be seen being broken through, and a green dragon could be seen soaring into the sky. The green dragon had a long beard and a pair of eyes that could captivate one's heartstrings, was looking down at the ground. Gu Haoran was stupefied. Zhang Jing was also stupefied. Everyone in the group was stupefied. The divine dragon in the legends. Roar! The green divine dragon roared towards the sky and flew towards Aluo River. After the divine dragon left, countless figures could be seen from within the Azure Dragon Empire. Naturally, Yang Yao and Shi Yu were also amongst them. The appearance of the abnormal flame meant that the abnormal flame was about to appear. Yi Hua, who was sitting in the pavilion, let out a breath. "Yi Hua, what's wrong?" Qingya asked concernedly. "I feel a bit better." After the dragon roar just now, Yi Hua felt that the abnormal flame within his body had calmed down, as if it wasn't that anxious anymore. However, it was still a bit restless, not sure if it was due to excitement or fear. "I reckon that it was due to excitement. After all, how could it be possible for the abnormal flame within my body to be afraid of another type of abnormal flame?" "Brother-in-law, was it that dragon roar just now?" Qing Yutong asked curiously. That dragon roar is an abnormal flame. After all, the appearance of an abnormal flame would always be accompanied by the appearance of an abnormal flame," Yi Hua said faintly. "Thinking back then, I also obtained my abnormal flame like this. Good things all have to be snatched. Do you think that someone would send them to you?" Dong Huang Baiji wanted to go and take a look. "This is a bit interesting." Of course it is interesting. Everyone wants an abnormal flame, including myself. Towards treasures, Yi Hua also had a hobby of collecting treasures, let alone a treasure like an abnormal flame. The few of them looked towards the horizon. A lot of people were flying out of the city, and the sky was filled with darkness. At the very front was Prison Emperor Yang Yao and Palace Master Shi Yu. "Haha! Abnormal flame. It really is an abnormal flame." Shi Yu let out a crazed laughter. For a divine dragon to actually appear, this abnormal flame must not be an ordinary abnormal flame. Although Yang Yao didn't say anything, his eyes were filled with excitement. It really is an abnormal flame. This intelligence report was actually true. It was unimaginable. Just as the 2 of them were getting excited, the green divine dragon could be seen rushing into Aluo River. This action caused the 2 of them to be startled. Aluo River means that it knows everything. No matter how strong a creature is, if it were to fall into Aluo River, even a deity would not be able to save it. If this divine dragon rushed into Aluo River, would it still be able to come out alive? End of this chapter. Chapter 845. Yang Yao and Shi Yu stood in the sky. They could also see Hua Yang's figure from 3 Absolute Palaces' side. Right now, they were also shocked by what they saw. Suddenly, the water of Aluo River began to boil, and the water level dropped. No one knew how deep the water of Aluo River was, but everyone actually saw the bottom. And that green dragon just now actually sucked up all the water of Aluo River. This is too terrifying. Right now, the dragon was like a child that had eaten its fill. Its 4 claws were facing the sky, revealing its pure white abdomen. Where's the deviant flame? Shiryu asked curiously. I don't know. Yang Yao was also a bit confused. The appearance of the green dragon was also a coincidence within a coincidence. In order to complete all the conditions, the emperor had to die. Only when the emperor died would he be buried, and only then would the coffin be placed in the arranged position to reflect the light. Of course, there was also the copper mirror that fell for no reason. It was as if everything was arranged by someone. From the information at the beginning to angering the emperor to death, everything was so meticulous, and there was not a single flaw. Whether this was a real anomaly or a man-made anomaly, no one knew. What should we do? Shiryu couldn't make up her mind. And Yang Yao also didn't know what to do. This is a dragon, if we offend it, only death awaits us. But what about the deviant flame? Where did the deviant flame go? Suddenly, the green dragon changed, the dragon's tail began to gradually disappear, turning into green starlight that floated in the sky, but didn't dissipate. In the blink of an eye, the entire dragon disappeared, and what replaced it was green starlight that floated in the sky. Everyone felt that the temperature was rising, and it was getting a bit hot. Suddenly, the green starlight gathered and turned into a lump of green light. Puff! A lump of green flame appeared in front of everyone, and the green light instantly illuminated the ground. Everyone was attracted by the color of the flame. That gentle green light made people feel very comfortable, and even made them want to sleep. Among the people from both sides, quite a number of people fell down. Yang Yao and Shiryu didn't care about them, they were attracted by the deviant flame in front of them, and greed appeared in their eyes. The legendary deviant flame is right in front of us. If I were to obtain it, then I would be able to get whatever I want. We can even be on par with Meridian Break Sect and Deity Academy. Yang Yao and Shiryu looked at each other. The strength of someone at the peak of the Do Zone class was completely unleashed. A majestic aura whistled in all directions, forming a strong wind. Kill! Kill! Following the words of the 2 bosses, the lackeys behind them roared angrily and began to fight. Yang Yao had already put on the thrice-tempered tomb spike. The thrice-tempered tomb spike emitted a faint blue light. Yang Yao, I didn't expect that you would actually refine a primeval divine weapon thrice. Shiryu spoke very casually, but his eyes were filled with astonishment. He was truly courageous, actually daring to temper it 3 times. Was he not afraid of failing and breaking it? After all, it was not that easy to obtain a primordial godly item. Yang Yao snorted coldly. In order to obtain the mystical flame, I have already made all the preparations. Shiryu, if you leave now, we will still be friends in the future. Yang Yao, you still think too highly of yourself. Shiryu bellowed angrily. The robe on his body instantly tore apart, revealing a set of gold-threaded armor underneath. Shiryu, this gold-threaded armor of yours has been tempered twice. Why did you stop tempering it? Perhaps it might be able to block my tomb spike. Old man, twice is enough to block your tomb spike. Watch my blade. Shiryu bellowed angrily. A long blade that was flickering with a cold light condensed in his hand. This blade was not some cheap weapon, it was even tempered 8 times. A faint orange light was emitting out from the blade. Yang Yao laughed loudly. You dare to be arrogant in front of me with such insignificant skills, toxic dragon drill. Yang Yao's arm emitted out a blue light, and the tomb spike was shot out. The speed of the spike was so fast that it made one speechless. Yang Yao, you are looking down on me too much. The large blade in Shiryu's hand immediately swayed. Seems like I came prepared. 5-element blade. Shiryu roared angrily. An illusion actually appeared from the large blade in his hand. The illusion was 300 meters long, causing one to be speechless. When the disciples saw that the palace master was so formidable, they all cheered. The mystical flame is mine. Shiryu slashed down with all his might. The corner of Yang Yao's mouth carried a trace of an evil smile and suddenly disappeared. Shiryu's expression sunk. He turned around and slashed down. Clang! The tomb spike and the long blade let out a loud sound that shook the heaven and earth.
Thunder rumbled, and the air wave that was emitted seemed as though it was going to pierce through the heaven and earth.
Sure you have improved during these few years. Yang Yao, you have regressed during these few years. Your speed has become slower, I have noticed it. Sure, you laughed lightly. In actuality, it was very hard to determine the victor in a battle between two peak Do Zongs.
For experts like these, one could only wait for the other party to make a mistake or have a flaw. If not, it would be impossible to defeat the other party. When one reached this level of battle, what they were competing with was experience and patience, or perhaps the advantage in equipment. However, from the looks of Yang Yao and Shi Yu, the difference in equipment between the two of them was not big.
Chapter 846.
Brother-in-law, they're coming, they're coming.
Qing Yutong immediately became excited as she pulled onto the blanket on Yi Hua's leg. Qing Ya and Donghuang Baiji, on the other hand, appeared to be very calm. They didn't care about such a scene at all. Daji was the same as well, her pair of beautiful eyes locked onto the crowd in the sky. As long as they dare to descend from the sky, I will kill them. Yutong, cover yourself properly with the blanket. You are going to catch a cold. Right now, Yi Hua truly understood the importance of covering himself with a blanket. Qing Yutong hurriedly covered Yi Hua with the blanket and asked anxiously, "Brother-in-law, are we still not going to make a move?" Qing Ya, who was at the side, said, "Yutong, you need to learn patience, don't be careless about everything." Qing Yutong's personality was probably unchangeable, but it was precisely this kind of personality that attracted Yi Hua. Right now, within the Azure Dragon Empire, everyone was looking at the sky with a look of doubt or hesitation on their faces. There are so many people, and they are even fighting with each other. From time to time, there would be people descending from the sky, bringing along a large amount of blood. It made people shiver. This isn't a joke. There are really people fighting in the sky above the Azure Dragon Empire. Right now, Yang Yao and Shi Yu were frantically fighting over the deviant fire, but the deviant fire was also avoiding the twos frantically fighting over it. Yang Yao, is there something wrong with your brain? You are already so old, why do you have to choose such disgusting names for your moves? They are all called drill drill. Shi Yu finally couldn't help but scold. Originally, the name of the move was a personal preference, but this Yang Yao's hobby was too disgusting. Yang Yao was also angry as he scolded angrily. What does the name I choose have to do with you? If I don't use drill, do I use bayonets? Can you not fucking disgust me? Azure Dragon Slash, I will hack you to death. You dirty old man. Deity drill. From time to time, scolding sounds could be heard coming out from the sky, and there were also waves of qi whistling out from the sky. Within the crowd's fear, there was also doubt. Yi Hua, who do you think will be able to get the deviant fire? Donghuang Baiji asked in boredom. After watching for so long, there was still no conclusion. So boring, I want to go to sleep. Qing Ye yawned, she seemed to be a bit sleepy, and even Qing Yutong, who was very excited at the start, was the same. The two of them are destined not to be able to obtain it, because someone will come to snatch it. Yi Hua said faintly. In actuality, from the very start, Yi Hua had already sensed the arrival of the third wave of people. It was just that, the third wave of people was hidden in the void and did not appear. It seemed like the third wave was waiting for the third wave of people to kill each other and love each other. Hearing what Yi Hua said, the few women's sleepiness was completely gone, and they began observing the situation of the battle. The sky gradually darkened, and the number of people in the sky had decreased by a lot. Some of the roofs had also been smashed with holes. Gu Haoran, who was standing in the imperial palace, had an ugly expression on his face when he saw the situation. These bastards had destroyed the imperial palace. Were they going to destroy the Azure Dragon Empire that had existed for over 1,000 years? At this moment, Yang Yao and Shi Yu were a little out of breath. The two of them couldn't tell who was better, so they could only use their Do Qi to fight. Yang Yao, do you have a better idea? Shi Yu asked in a deep voice. Do you have a better idea? Yang Yao also wanted to end it because most of his people were dead. It was the same for the three Absolute Hall on Shi Yu's side. Many of their disciples were dead. If they continued to fight like this, they would become a lone commander. I have a good idea. Suddenly, a voice rang out from the void, and two men could be seen walking out from the void. Seeing the appearance of the two men,
Yang Yao and Shi Yu's expression immediately darkened. Yuanyang Palace. I didn't expect that there would be people who know about Yuanyang Palace in this small Aluo river.
I rather admire you.
After the man finished speaking, he stretched out his hand, and a huge attractive force attacked towards the deviant flame. The green-colored deviant flame that had just been born was immediately sucked into the man's palm. The green-colored light illuminated the man's face. It was a very handsome face, but when it was illuminated by the green-colored flame, it looked very ghostly. So, this is the legendary Black Sieve Profound Sect. I didn't expect that it would fall into my Yuanyang Palace. Congratulations. The man roared with laughter, while the man standing behind him remained silent, appearing very steady.
Even Yang Yao couldn't tell who was the leader of the two. Shi Yu was also not a kind person.
She pointed her sword at the man and said, "Release the deviant flame. I was the one who discovered it first."
The man laughed lightly.
You must be the leader of the 3 ultimate halls of the Aluo River.
I've heard a lot about you. I am Feng Xiao, one of the thugs of Yuanyang Palace. I am here today to retrieve the deviant flame for you.
Yang Yao was very annoyed.
How did Yuanyang Palace, who was so far away, know about this? That shouldn't be possible. Could it be that he wasn't the only one who knew about this, but also the people of Yuanyang Palace?
Yang Yao said in a low voice. Feng Xiao.
The deviant flame appeared in the Aluo River. Yuanyang Palace is so far away. It doesn't make sense for you to interfere.
You must be the prison emperor of the benevolent king prison.
Although the deviant flame came from the Aluo River, it is also something from the north. All the powers can participate in the fight for it. How can you say that the Aluo River is the only one fighting for it? It doesn't make sense. Feng Xiao said with a smile, his face brimming with confidence. This confidence came from strength. Emperor Do. Yang Yao and Shi Yu looked at each other. If they didn't fight for it now, they wouldn't have another chance in the future. Therefore, the two of them instantly reached a consensus. Ecstasy drill. Taishu blade technique. Yang Yao and Shi Yu didn't hold back. They immediately used their big moves and gave it their all.
Feng Xiao handed the deviant flame in his hand to the man behind him, and looked at the two of them with a smile.
No matter how arrogant a Dozong is, he shouldn't be arrogant in front of a Do Di. Feng Xiao's entire aura changed. The entire Azure Dragon Empire started to shake because this was the pressure from a Do Di. The sky rumbled as if it was the end of the world. A terrifying aura swept towards the two of them. Just this aura alone made Yang Yao and Shi Yu feel exceptionally heavy. The moves in their hands instantly weakened. A mere force from the Aluo River dares to play big moves in front of Yuanyang Palace. Feng Xiao's face darkened.
He pushed both of his hands forward and a gust of wind suddenly appeared from his palms.
Yang Yao and Shi Yu's charging bodies stopped in the air. The power of their big moves instantly disappeared. The two of them looked at Feng Xiao with shocked eyes. Was this the strength of a Do Di?
He could defeat the two of them with just his aura.
Do you want to lose your life to snatch the deviant flame, or obediently go back and be your boss? Feng Xiao coldly asked. Shi Yu and Yang Yao had no other choice. The opponent was too strong, so strong that they didn't dare to move. They didn't even dare to think about snatching the deviant flame. Hua Yang was currently injured. Looking at the scene in front of him, he realized that he was still so weak. End of this chapter. Chapter 847. Their palace lord was a peak Dozong, and that Ran King Prison's prison emperor was also a peak Dozong. A single Do emperor was enough to suppress all of them.
Looking at his own hallmaster, he saw that he was trembling as if he had just peed, as if he could not stop peeing.
Seeing such a situation, all the prison kings' hearts turned cold.
If the prison emperor could get his hands on the mystical flame, he would be able to break through to become a Do emperor.
At that time, would he still need to be afraid of the two of them? He wouldn't need to be afraid at all. He could even fight against Yuanyang Manor. Although Yuanyang Manor was second to none in the north, they still had the strength to fight against them. Yang Yao said gravely, "Mystical flame is a good thing. It isn't appropriate for Yuanyang Manor to take it away just like that." What else do you want? Feng Xiao asked curiously. What can you give us? Yang Yao retorted. Fighting for the greatest benefit? His benevolent king prison and the 3 absolute hall were at each other's throats. How could it be possible for Yuanyang Prefecture to take everything the moment they arrived? At the very least, they should cough up some blood. Feng Xiu laughed lightly. Are you still not satisfied with giving me your life? Hearing this, Shi Yu and Yang Yao's face darkened. This is a blatant threat, shameless thing. Go to hell after you die, trash. Just when the two were talking, the mystical flame suddenly ran away. The man standing behind Feng Xiu's face tightened, and he pulled at the direction where the mystical flame ran away. The huge pull made the mystical flame a lot slower, but it still ran away desperately. The green flame didn't seem to be that bright anymore. Seeing such a situation, Yang Yao and Shi Yu clapped their hands in their hearts. After all, if we can't get it, others can't either. Feng Xiu's face darkened, and he pulled the mystical flame along with the man behind him. Right at this moment, the mystical flame let out a powerful green light, causing people to cover their eyes. In just an instant, the mystical flame flew towards the Azure Dragon Empire. Chase! The man who didn't speak all this while shouted and took the lead to chase. Feng Xiu took a glance at the two and chased after them. Although Feng Xiu introduced himself as Yuanyang Manor's hired thug, it wasn't that simple. These 2 people were Yuanyang Manor's left and right law protectors. For such a big matter, the palace master naturally had to use the best people. Yi Hua looked at the deviant flames that were rushing towards him, and the corner of his mouth unconsciously revealed an arc. My entire body feels much better, and those deviant flames within my body are no longer restless. Along with Yi Hua stretching out his palm, the green-colored deviant flame fell onto Yi Hua's palm. The deviant flame was as quiet as a kitten, and it was even intimately stroking Yi Hua's palm. Meanwhile, Qing Ya and the others were also looking at the deviant flame curiously. They didn't have much feelings towards the deviant flame, after all, it was something that children shouldn't play with. In the eyes of others, this deviant flame might be a super treasure, but in the eyes of these mothers, it was just a child's toy. There was no other explanation. Yi Hua, this deviant flame seems to be very weak. Qing Ya looked at the deviant flame in Yi Hua's hand and said, It's just a newborn. It'll be fine after a while. Yi Hua said faintly. Although it is a bit weak, in any case, it is still a deviant flame. As for what abilities this deviant flame has, I will slowly uncover it in the future. Now there was one thing to solve, and that was the 2 people who had fallen behind. At this moment, Feng Xiu and Xia Yang landed together. They looked at Yi Hua, who was sitting in the wheelchair, and the deviant flame in his hand. However, they neglected the 4 beautiful women beside Yi Hua. However, there were a few people floating above Wan residence. Yang Yao and Shi Yu didn't leave in a hurry as they looked at the situation below. Who is this man? Why did the deviant flame end up in his hand? Feng Xiu and Xia Yang had this question in their hearts as well. Who are you? How dare you spoil the matters of my Yuanyang residence? Right now, Feng Xiu's mood was very bad. Originally, his plan was going smoothly, and he would be able to directly report back to Yuanyang residence later on. Yi Hua raised his right hand, and the green deviant flame disappeared. Evidently, he had already kept the deviant flame. This also represented a possibility. The deviant flame recognized a master. Yang Yao and Shi Yu looked at the scene dumbfoundedly. Is it that easy for a deviant flame to recognize a master? Isn't it very troublesome for a deviant flame to recognize a master? Furthermore, it might even be very dangerous. Those are all farts. We can only see it with our own eyes. Right now, it can only be said that this man is very arrogant. He actually took something from Yuanyang residence and kept the deviant flame without saying anything. I reckon that the people from Yuanyang residence are going to explode in anger. The 2 people from Yuanyang residence were indeed on the verge of exploding in anger, and the veins on their foreheads were already popping out. This man actually subdued the deviant flame. How is this possible? Even the residence master said that subduing a deviant flame would take a very long time, but this man actually subdued the deviant flame in an instant. Their entire brain was unable to understand what was going on. Also, those women who were standing at the side. Feng Xiu and Xia Yang finally noticed those women, and the first thing that they felt was that they were stunned. Chapter 848. Dodgy, go and make some tea. Yi Hua said faintly. Daji was slightly startled. I wanted to do something for Master, but Master didn't allow me to do it.
Let's go somewhere else.
Yi Hua said faintly. Feng Xiao and Xiaoyang nodded.
After all, if such a battle were to start, a large number of Azure Dragon Empire's commoners would die. If it was the past Yi Hua, he wouldn't have said such a thing. The more people die, the better.
However, the current Yi Hua still took this into consideration. Therefore, he chose to change the location and teach them a lesson.
You guys are indeed very powerful. In front of Benevolent King Prison and 3 Absolute Palace, you guys can do whatever you want, but in front of me, even the Emperor has to kneel, let alone you small fries.
The group of people changed the location, and Qingye directly brought the pavilion with her. When her husband went out to fight, as the wife, she would definitely cheer him on the side. Seeing that the group of people left, Gu Haoren heaved a sigh of relief. He was afraid that they would destroy the Azure Dragon Empire, and if that happened, he would become the second emperor to die from anger. At a small stall on the street of the Azure Dragon Empire, a man smiled as he watched the group of people leave. It seemed like everything was under his control. Yi Hua, who was sitting on the wheelchair, had already recovered. He looked refreshed as if he had just taken a bath.
The deviant fire in his body had all calmed down.
As for the green deviant fire that was growing rapidly, I'm really curious. Although Yi Hua had recovered, he didn't plan to stand up. He didn't want to give them a blow. Who are you? Hand over the deviant fire. I can still spare your life. Feng Xiao shouted at Yi Hua. Xia Yang, who was at the side, also had a black face. If I don't do this well, it will be a shame. 2 emperor doers went to snatch something, and they didn't even get it. Isn't that embarrassing?
Master, the tea is ready.
Daji obediently brought over a cup of tea. Yi Hua took it and took a sip. Daji, your culinary skills are getting better and better. Thank you for your compliment, Master. Hearing her master's praise, Daji was satisfied and continued to make tea. Facing Yi Hua's disregard, Feng Xiao became angry. Arrogant child. Watch my arrow. In his rage, Feng Xiao condensed a white feather bow in his left hand. There were no arrows, but he could use his battle chi to form arrows. Boundless battle chi formed in Feng Xiao's right hand, and a golden arrow slowly formed. With a terrifying pressure, the entire world began to whistle, and the clouds in the sky began to reverse. All of this was because of this golden arrow. Yang Yao and Shi Yu, who were watching from the sky, inhaled a breath of cool air. Was this the strength of a Dodi? So strong. Just condensing this feather arrow had caused such a huge commotion, and that bow didn't look like an ordinary item either. Fortunately, he did not become enemies with the 2 of them just now. Otherwise, he would definitely be dead. Facing the might of a Dodi, all of the people who were watching the battle exclaimed in admiration. However, to Yi Hua, these people were still salted fish, and there was no difference between them. He slowly sipped his tea and looked at the other party. When it came to archery, Brett was also an expert. I wonder when Absolute Heaven will be able to recover. This time, when I return, I'll have to assign some tasks to them. I can't let them stay idle.
I, the Supreme Overlord, promised them that I would let them go on a killing spree after coming here.
Looking at Yi Hua's indifferent look, Feng Xiao felt that his dignity was being trampled on. I, a Dodi, am releasing my attack, and yet, Yi Hua is actually still drinking tea and thinking about other things. Go and die. You trash. Great destruction. Feng Xiao's arrow wasn't shot towards Yi Hua, it was shot towards the sky. After the arrow left the bowstring, an enormous amount of battle chi erupted, and the entire world seemed to have quietened down. A golden arrow flew into the black clouds, and one could faintly see that the clouds were flickering with a golden light. Bang! A loud sound rang out from the clouds, and all of the people who were watching the battle covered their ears. Those who were weaker even started to bleed. Yi Hua sipped his tea, looked at the clouds silently, and let out a breath. Suddenly, the golden light in the sky disappeared, and a pitch-black arrow descended towards Yi Hua. Everyone immediately revealed a shocked expression. Why did the golden arrow turn black? Furthermore, the might of the arrow seems to have become even more valiant. Look at the battle chi that is being emitted from the arrow. It seems like the arrow is going to pierce through the ground. The arrow that was descending from the sky had already pierced through the air, forming an arc-shaped air wave,
and the entire ground was shaking. As long as this arrow lands, a huge crater would be formed, and the size of the crater should be as big as the Azure Dragon Empire. However, Yi Huamin continued drinking his tea while looking at the descending arrow. Big sister, how do you think brother-in-law is going to act cool? Qing Yutong hurriedly asked. She wasn't the slightest bit worried about what Yi Hua was going to do. After all, these two people were much weaker than the two people who suddenly appeared in the palace that day. Qing Yi pursed her lips. Based on my understanding of Yi Hua, he likes to snap his fingers and act cool. The possibility of that is very high. Dong Huang Baiji agreed. In the past, Yi Hua liked to snap his fingers the most, and he would snap his fingers whenever he didn't agree with something. Because of that, Dong Huang Baiji and Qing Yi also liked to snap their fingers. Qing Yutong laughed. I feel that brother-in-law will grab hold of the arrow. Right after Qing Yutong finished speaking, a terrifying cyclone immediately spread out. Because the arrow had already landed. Dust filled the sky, and Feng Xiu revealed out a confident smile. With such an arrow, not even a single strand of hair will be left behind. To actually dare to go against me, Feng Xiu, you are simply courting death. And to even dare to covet the mysterious fire, you are truly overestimating yourself. Is the mysterious fire something that you should be taking? Yang Yao, who was standing in the sky, said, This person from Yuanyang Palace is indeed formidable. That's right, I am completely unable to take on this arrow. I reckon that when the arrow lands, I will be crushed into minced meat by that enormous dookie. Sure, you said gravely. Even though they were very far away from each other, they were still able to feel that terrifying might, let alone that man who was sitting in a wheelchair. He would have to endure all of that might. Seizing the mysterious fire sure is dangerous. Yang Yao couldn't help but sigh. And this is only the people from Yuanyang Palace who are participating in this. If the people from the north and the people from the south are added in, then they would definitely have to fight to the death. Gradually, when the dust dispersed, Qing Yutong cried out in surprise. Didn't I say so? Brother-in-law should act cool like this. The corner of Qing Ya and Dong Huang Baiji's mouth twitched. We really guessed it right. Right now, Yi Hua was grabbing onto the arrow with his right hand, and the arrowhead was still very far away from Yi Hua's forehead. Looking at Yi Hua's action, the entire place became silent. Yang Yao and Shi Yu's mind was buzzing. How is this possible? This man actually grabbed onto an arrow with his bare hands, and it is even an arrow that was shot out by a Do Di. Is he a Do Zun? He is even an overlord. It is impossible for something like this to happen. However, Feng Xiu and Xia Yang were shocked as well, and their entire bodies became stiff. This cripple who is sitting in a wheelchair, is he even a human? End of this chapter. Chapter 849. This was the first time Feng Xiu saw someone being able to catch his arrow bare-handed. Even if it was the palace master, he wouldn't be able to do it so easily. He would have to use a technique to block the arrow, but this man was able to do it. Furthermore, it was so easy. What do you think you are catching? Catching fish. Damn it! Using such a method to trample on my dignity, this is unforgivable. I must definitely defeat him and wash away my shame. Feng Xiu could be seen taking a step back with his right leg. Immediately, countless cracks appeared on the ground and spread towards the surroundings. Originally, the white feather bow was white in color. However, right now, the color of the white feather bow gradually became dim, and it no longer had its original brightness. However, the might it gave off increased by more than a few times, all the way until the entire white feather bow became black gold. However, this kind of gold was not the kind that was shiny, but it made people feel suffocated. A terrifying aura condensed in Feng Xiu's right hand, and a thin and long arrow began to form. The arrow revolved around the arrow while carrying the aura of death. This arrow contained the might of the world, making people speechless. Xia Yang, who was standing not far away from Feng Xiu, was a bit surprised. Feng Xiu actually made a breakthrough today. This is truly worthy of celebration. As expected, only by meeting a strong opponent will one be able to stimulate one's potential. However, the strength of this opponent might be very formidable. If Feng Xiu's attack doesn't succeed, both of us will be in danger. Since you dare to humiliate me like this, I shall let you experience what is called the taste of death. Moon-breaking arrow. A biting cold aura burst out from the bow. If this arrow was said to be able to pierce through the moon, Yang Yao and Shi Yu who were standing in the air would not doubt it.
I'm afraid that this arrow won't be so easy to block. Shi Yu released the strength of a peak Do Zong to block the terrifying aura. Yang Yao was the same as well. He could only release his Duki to block the aura. As expected of a Do Emperor. Qing Yutong was especially excited right now. Big sister Baiji, how do you think brother-in-law is going to play now? Qing Ya and Donghuang Baiji laughed and chose not to answer. Yihua doesn't seem to be playing with his fingers anymore. He is playing with other tricks. Aya, the two of you are actually not speaking anymore, seriously. Qing Yutong stomped her feet. This is so boring. If only Yi Zizi was here, she would have definitely made the bet already. Yihua looked at the incoming arrow and said faintly, "If this is your most formidable technique, then I am indeed a bit disappointed." It could be seen that the arrow in Yihua's hand did not disappear. Instead, Yihua directly threw it out. This person is crazy. Looking at Yihua's actions, Yang Yao mumbled. Yeah, he actually threw an arrow at Feng Xiu's buttocks. This is simply humiliating Feng Xiu again. It's too miserable. Shi Yu spoke softly. If he was Feng Xiu, he would definitely find a place to bury himself. He had actually been endlessly humiliated by the other party. Being a Do Di, this was even more miserable than being killed. It should be known that a Do Di was respected no matter where he went. However, Yang Yao and Shi Yu felt that a Do Di was only so today. If they met an even more powerful opponent, they would have to unleash their strongest attack. Feng Xiu looked at Yihua's actions and the arrow that was thrown at him from his buttocks and said mockingly, "You want to block my attack with just this? You are just daydreaming." Feng Xiu's words weren't without any basis. Looking at the arrow that Yihua threw out, it was soft, and it seemed like it wasn't even hard at all. Looking at the arrow that Feng Xiu threw out, it was simply hard, and the aura that it brought along was enough to destroy the world. Ignorance is very scary, especially naive ignorance. Yihua said faintly. There was not a single ripple on his face, and he looked extremely cool. Qing Yutong stood in the pavilion and clapped her hands. Brother-in-law looks so handsome, as expected of my brother-in-law, act tough King Yi. Qing Ya and Donghuang Baiji shook their heads. This bad habit of Yihua's might not be able to be changed in this lifetime. The two arrows finally collided with each other. In actuality, the two arrows were formed from Duki. Although they were both Feng Xiu's Duki, when Feng Xiu held the arrows in his hands, he had already injected his own Duki into the arrows, and a qualitative change had already occurred to the arrows. Even if a blade of grass were to receive the Duki of the main body, it would be able to kill the other party, let alone this arrow. If this arrow of yours is able to break through my defense, I will eat shit. Feng Xiu seemed to be very confident of his own strength. However, Feng Xiu also flew into a rage out of humiliation. Towards his arrow being able to be caught by Yihua. He thought that it was Yihua's luck. Even Xia Yang who was behind Feng Xiu felt the same way. Thus, he asked Feng Xiu to test out Yihua once again. After hearing what Feng Xiu said, Yihua laughed lightly. If that is the case, you will have to prepare a big basin. The soft butt of the arrow could be seen colliding with Feng Xiu's arrow. The crowd that was standing in the air immediately raised their hands to block the light, fearing that they would be blinded by the light. However, the expected explosion didn't appear. On the contrary, it was very quiet, and there wasn't even a trace of aura fluctuation. Because, this was an absolute suppression. The butt of the arrow could be seen directly piercing through Feng Xiu's arrow, turning into Duki and dissipating in the air. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned. How is this possible?
It is one thing for you to be able to catch the arrow with one hand, but with just a casual throw of the arrow, you are able to break through someone's ultimate technique, and you are even able to break through it without anyone noticing.
Is it really all right for you to do this? You can't be like this. This is too much of a blow to people. At this moment, Feng Xiu and Xia Yang were unable to remain calm. This person is so terrifying. Just a casual throw of the arrow has such a great power, and nothing happened. It's gone just like that. Just when Feng Xiu and Xia Yang were in a daze, the arrow that was originally slow suddenly sped up. This kind of speed was already not something that could be seen with the naked eye, and even the two Do Emperors were unable to sense it. Puff! This was a kind of dull sound that came from piercing through flesh.
Feng Xiu suddenly laughed loudly. Do you think that you are able to pierce through me with an arrow's butt?
You are thinking too much. Who said that an arrow's butt can't pierce someone to death? Yi Hua said softly. At this moment, Feng Xiu felt pain in his brain.
Slightly lowering his head to take a look, he saw that an arrow that was formed by Duki had shot through his abdomen, and the arrowhead was still in front of him, as if it was pierced through by someone from the back.
Seeing this scene, the crowd in the air couldn't help but rub their eyes. Is this real? Unbelievable. Just who is that man on the wheelchair? He is actually living in the Azure Dragon Empire for no reason, and he is actually so low-key.
If not for the matter of the mystical flame, probably no one would know that there is such a pervert living in the city.
Hua Yong, who was standing in the crowd, looked at the man, and then looked at the women in the pavilion.
Only now did he realize that one of the women in the pavilion was the one who was at the banquet that day.
Then the other three masked women, they must be them. End of this chapter. Chapter 850.
And looking at the situation, the relationship between these women and this man was not ordinary.
Could it be that they were all his women? It was possible that these women had appeared in the imperial palace. Could it be that they also knew about the heavenly flame, so they had specially waited here? He was quite a schemer, choosing to appear at the very last moment. Feng Xiu could feel the pain in his abdomen, but he could still accept it. This was just a small injury, nothing to be afraid of. Feng Xiu was preparing to pull out the arrow.
When he held the arrow in his hand, he could feel that the arrow in his abdomen was extremely unstable, as if it was about to explode.
Feng Xiu was sure that if it really exploded, he would not be able to keep his body, and his cultivation would be halved. Who the hell are you? Feng Xiu began to panic. If he could remain calm in the face of such an opponent, then he was definitely not human. Yi Hua said faintly, Me? I come from the northern Liang's Wuxia Empire. Wuxia Empire? When everyone heard about this empire, they were dumbfounded because they had never heard of such a place before. Yi Huashan took the opportunity to advertise his territory. He believed that after tonight, the entire Aluo River region would know of the existence of Voidless Empire. I know that all of you are puzzled. Wuxia Empire is a majestic city, and you small sects and clans are nothing more than some grains of sand. Along with Yi Hua's words, everyone became even more curious about Voidless Empire, and they even planned to go and take a look at this empire to see just what it was like. A small void empire also dares to act arrogantly in front of Yuanyang Manor. Feng Xiu once again gripped the arrow in his abdomen, planning to pull it out. This was a time bomb, and he did not know when it would explode, so he might as well pull it out. Let me remind you, it will explode. Yi Hua said indifferently. Feng Xiu's hands stopped moving. He wanted to crush the other party's head, but he was unable to do so. This feeling intertwined in his heart, and he felt that he would explode before the arrow even exploded. Yi Hua said once again, You all should be very curious as to why there wasn't any explosion just now. In actuality, the explosion was absorbed. If you all want to see it, you all can. Feng Xiu's expression became even uglier after hearing this. As a Dou Di, he was worshipped by tens of thousands of people. However, he had fallen here today. He had lost all his face. At this moment, Xia Yang walked out with a respectful expression. This was power. Only by being strong would one be able to obtain other people's respect. Yi Hua had understood this principle long ago. It was just that in the past, his understanding was more extreme. At that time, he felt that killing was the only way. But now that he had changed his method, the result was the same. Senior, Xia Yang cupped his hands and greeted. Did Liang Jingru give it to me? Xia Yang was also a Dou Di. He had already bowed and said some things that he shouldn't have said. However, the other party was still unwilling to forgive him. Xia Yang, don't be long-winded with him. You leave, I will hold him back. Go and report to the residence master. Feng Xiu said softly. Right now they could only do this. However, without waiting for Xia Yang to speak, Yi Hua said faintly, Want to leave? Do you think that is possible? Yi Hua stretched out his right hand. His thumb and middle finger lightly touched each other. Then, snap. A finger snap appeared. Space was sealed. Xia Yang instantly felt the space was sealed. Right now, he couldn't run out. Yang Yao and sure you also felt it. They couldn't stay calm. We are just watching the show, not participating in the battle. Don't do this. We are innocent. Senior, what is the meaning of this? Xia Yang couldn't help but ask. You actually asked such a stupid question. Of course I won't let you go. Yi Hua said faintly. The intelligence of these people is really worrying. They actually asked why, my God. Then what do you want? Xia Yang asked in a deep voice. Feng Xiu's strength was on par with his. Feng Xiu was already beaten to this state. If it was him, the ending would be the same. Right now, he couldn't fight recklessly with others. He had to find a chance to escape. Yi Hua tidied up the quilt on his legs.
He didn't even look over and said faintly, I am in a very bad mood.
If you can kneel down and worship me, I might be merciful. Kneel. This man actually asked a Dou Di to kneel. In Yang Yao and Shi Yu's impression, there were only Dou Di who died in battle. There were no Dou Di who was born kneeling. End of this chapter. Chapter 851. Hearing Yi Hua's request, Xia Yang and Feng Xiu were stunned, but they were soon covered by anger. Are you trying to humiliate us? Xia Yang asked in a deep voice. This man was the most arrogant person he had ever seen. Even the palace master who was a Dou Zun was not so arrogant. Even the meridian-breaking sect's leader and Shen Academy's dean were not so arrogant. Yi Hua patted the dust on the quilt and said softly, Since you already know, do you still want to ask? It is impossible for us to kneel. At most, we will fight with you together. Hearing Xia Yang's words, Yi Hua actually laughed. Fight with me? Can you let me take a breath? Or can you make me shed a drop of blood? Xia Yang and Feng Xiu's breathing became a little rapid. They were angered by Yi Hua. He actually made a Dou Zun kneel and even said that the two of them together couldn't hurt him. Where did his confidence come from? Yi Hua felt that this kind of trick should be over. He was not in the mood to continue arguing with them. After all, this was just a small scene. He would play with them in a big scene in the future. Yi Hua waved his hand, and the people standing in the void suddenly felt dizzy. Everyone felt that they were going to die. Yang Yao and Shi Yu also felt the same. They were only here to watch the battle, not to cause trouble. But before they came back to their senses, their bodies had already lost feeling, and they all fell to the ground and fainted. Seeing this situation, Xia Yang was a little confused. Originally, he thought that this man would kill them, but he only made them faint? What's going on? Yi Hua made these people faint because he didn't want them to see something. After all, if I show my strength, why would you people who are not afraid of death come to find me? As for why he didn't make these two people faint, because they won't be able to leave alive, so, it can be ignored. Yi Hua slowly stood up and put the quilt on the wheelchair. Seeing this man stand up, Xia Yang and Feng Xiu were obviously surprised. Isn't he a cripple? Why did he suddenly stand up? If you think that you can hurt me together, then I will make you despair. The gap in strength is a hard wound that can't be changed. Me? This man actually called himself me. Is he a Dou Zun? He is an Ji Zun. Just as the two of them were feeling puzzled, a terrifying aura came sweeping over. Xia Yang's eyes almost popped out. This aura! At this moment, blood was flowing from the corner of Feng Xiu's mouth. In the face of this terrifying pressure, he was completely unable to move. This man was telling the truth.
Xia Yang used all his strength to raise his head and look at the man not far away.
In Xia Yang's eyes, he saw many vengeful spirits hovering around, letting out mournful cries.
However, they were all suppressed by the man's aura, and their faces were filled with horror.
Feel my power. This is how you all show off after your deaths. Yi Hua said lightly, and his aura increased by a bit once again. The entire space was trembling. Thud. Xia Yang and Feng Xiu couldn't bear such pressure at all. Both of them knelt in front of Yi Hua. No matter how much they didn't want to kneel, they had to accept the fact that this man could kill them with one finger. He was not a Dou Zun. He was a supreme being. Just like the Broken Meridian sect and the Shen Academy, they all had supreme beings. Yi Hua said lightly, It will be your honor to be able to kneel in front of me. After all, there are many people who don't even have the opportunity to kneel. Don't feel that this is a shame.
This is a supreme honor, and it is also something that you can boast about in the future. The huge pressure made the two of them speechless. No wonder he could instantly subdue the mystical fire. It turned out that he was a supreme being. This was bullying. A supreme being actually bullied two Emperor Dozun. Shameless. I know you are cursing in your hearts, but the Kangluo continent is a place where the weak are prey to the strong.
Weren't you threatening others just now?
Coincidentally, my strength is more powerful, so I can threaten you. Yi Hua said as he walked, gradually approaching the two of them. However, as Yi Hua approached, the pressure became stronger and stronger, and the two of them were directly pressed to the ground. It was as if the weight of the entire Kangluo continent was pressing on their backs, making it difficult for them to breathe. Raise your head,
Yi Hua said lightly.
Not knowing where they got the strength from, Xia Yang and Feng Xiu both raised their heads, and at this moment,
Yi Hua's face suddenly changed. It turned into a skeleton face.
Then, it changed back to its original appearance, and the corner of his mouth curled up into a trace of a smile. However, when Xia Yang and Feng Xiu saw this face, their expressions changed from bewilderment to shocking fear. This was a trembling from the bottom of their hearts. There was no fear of death in their eyes, and they were completely shocked by this face. They were all Emperor Dozun. How could they not know what happened 10 years ago? An undead started a massacre in the south. At that time, the south was like hell, and they were like locusts. Everywhere they passed by, there was not a single living person. Hearing such a thing, the people living in the north all felt lucky that they were not people from the south, and escaped the calamity. In the end, over 100 Supremes were mobilized to kill those undead. However, half of the Supremes died, which showed how terrifying the undead's strength was. But now they were told. The undead from 10 years ago didn't die. Furthermore, he was still standing in front of them, perfectly fine. How could they not be shocked? How could they not be afraid? Why didn't he die? Why did he come back? Furthermore, he came back in human form. You are the one from back then. Xia Yang didn't know where he got the strength to ask this question. Yi Hua didn't let Xia Yang finish his words. He said lightly, Yes, I am the one from back then. Is it an accident? Do you really want to spread this news and let everyone know that I am back? Indeed, Xia Yang really wanted to go back and report this matter, but he couldn't do it. He regretted that he was too weak. But when he heard this man admit his identity, his face also turned gloomy. So, it is not unjust for you to die in my hands. I didn't lie to you, right? Xia Yang and Feng Xiu lowered their heads. Indeed, it was better to die in the hands of such a super demon than to die in the hands of a nobody. At least in the future, people would find out that they, two Emperor Dozun, had a great battle with this undead and were killed in the end. By the way, I did not appear for the mystical fire because I have a lot of mystical fires. Yi Hua stretched out his finger, and colorful mystical fires appeared on his finger. Xia Yang and Feng Xiu could clearly feel that their eyes were filled with shock and fear. He is back. He even became stronger. It's over. Kangluo continent is finished. God, why did you let this undead come back to life? Why did you let him come back to harm the Kangluo continent? God, you want to destroy my Kangluo continent. Damn it! I am not willing to die like this. End of this chapter. Chapter 852. Yi Hua let out a breath and looked at the night sky of Kangluo continent. The moon hanging in the sky was especially round. Coupled with the current scenery, it was like a bottle of top-notch red wine. Go in peace. In the future, there will be people who will help you take revenge. But don't expect too much. No. Don't expect too much, because your ending will be the same as yours. Maybe you won't even have the chance to kneel and worship me. After speaking, Yi Hua turned around and left without looking at them again. Feng Xiu and Xia Yang, who were absent-minded, immediately felt the pressure on their bodies getting heavier. They were actually suffocated to death by the pressure released. Even the two Supremes from Broken Meridian Sect and Shen Academy couldn't do it. After all, I am a doer. I want to kill a doer with pressure. Unless it's above Supremes. The two raised their heads and looked at the back of the figure that was getting further away. The shock in their eyes had already reached a peak. The undead is back. And its strength is even more terrifying than before.
The future of Kangluo continent is finished. Bang! The huge pressure made the two lower their heads again. Their entire bodies were pressed on the ground. Blood could be seen coming out of Feng Xiao and Xia Yang's skin. All of the veins on their bodies burst, but there was no scene of blood spurting out. The blood was all suppressed inside their bodies. Puff! The thickness of the two's body actually decreased. Their hard bones could no longer withstand the pressure and started to break. The pain made the two wish that they could die immediately. But will Yihua let these two die so easily? They actually dared to make a move on my women. Don't they know that these women can't even bear to hit me? All right, I will only dare to hit their butts. As the pressure increased again, the two were directly pressed into pancakes. However, after the two died, their primordial spirits appeared. The two glowing golden balls seemed to want to escape. They tried their best to bring the news of this place out. If they had the black pieces from Broken Meridian sect, they would be much more at ease. Unfortunately, that kind of technique was monopolized by Broken Meridian sect. Did Yihua not know that they had primordial spirits? Under such a strong pressure, primordial spirits couldn't escape at all. The two primordial spirits were once again suppressed by the violent pressure and landed beside their corpses. Then, like their corpses, they instantly turned into golden pancakes and gradually dissipated. Xia Yang and Feng Xiao no longer existed in this world. They completely disappeared. Yihua lightly waved his hand, and the barrier immediately dissipated. Yihua then floated down onto the pavilion. Master, have some tea. Daji respectfully served tea. Her master was simply too powerful, and she could only look up at his majestic back. Compared to her master, she was just a small dot on the stars, appearing so insignificant. Yehua, what did you say to them at the end that scared them half to death? Qingya asked curiously. Just now, it could be seen that they were really scared. That's right, brother-in-law, why don't you tell us about it? How did you scare those two Dodi to the point that they peed their pants? Qing Yutong shook Yihua's arm and asked cutely. In this world, only Qing Yutong would dare to shake Yihua's arm like this. Qing Ya and Dong Huang Baiji were both mature women, and they wouldn't act like a spoiled child like this. And Qing Yutong had always been treating herself as 18 years old, and was acting coquettishly and cute in all kinds of ways. I reckon that in the future, when she becomes more than 10,000 years old, she would still treat herself as an 18-years-old little girl. We were just chatting casually. Who knew he would be so easily frightened? Yihua said faintly. I really didn't expect that just by revealing my skeletal face, I would be able to scare others to the point that they peed their pants. In the future, I have to reveal my skeletal face more often. I really like the expression on their faces when they peed their pants after being scared by me. It has already been 10 years since the incident happened, but it turns out that I still have such a position in their hearts. Interesting. Let's play big this time then. Hurry up and speak. Don't keep us in suspense. Qing Ya and Dong Huang Baiji pressed Yihua onto the chair. It seems like if you don't speak properly today, we are going to quarrel with you. Actually, it's nothing much, I just revealed my identity to them. You all also know that I have a grudge against them, so they peed their pants from fright. Yihua said faintly. In his mind, he was currently preparing for a big matter, and he had just suddenly thought of this matter. Hearing Yihua's words, the wives finally understood. It seems like the Yihua in the past was also a demon king. If not, he wouldn't have been scared to death. We are going to head back right now. We are going to hold the annual meeting. This meeting is very important. Yihua said gravely. His tone seemed to be very urgent and very serious. Seeing that Yihua had become serious, the wives also became serious. After all, joking was one thing. Within the pavilion, Yihua instantly disappeared along with the 4 women. The pavilion that was floating in the air lost control and directly fell onto the ground, shattering into pieces. Meanwhile, Yihua directly appeared in Wuxia Empire's palace and sat on the throne that belonged to him. Qing Ya, Dong Huang Baiji, and Qing Yutong, as the 3 empresses, sat on the left and right of Yihua. Daji had the identity of a maid, so she was only standing beside Yihua to serve him. However, this was also a kind of benefit. One must know that all of Yihua's subordinates were standing below, and only his wives were qualified to sit beside him. For Daji to stand beside him was already very lucky. Yihua immediately informed everyone to gather for the meeting. In the time it took to drink a cup of tea, all of Yihua's subordinates stood respectfully below. When they saw Daji who was beside his honor, all of them were confused, except for Wei Chong. However, Mu Ran's figure wasn't within the crowd, because Mu Ran was still in a state of being deceived, and she didn't know that Wei Chong and the others were the emperor's subordinates. Other than Mu Ran, everyone else was present. Subordinate pays respect to your honor, pays respect to your honor's wife. Your honor's wife is blessed by a flood of fortune that illuminates the world. All of Yihua's subordinates bowed and kowtowed. Their lines were still the same, causing Yihua to feel a bit less fresh. However, this wasn't the main point. Get up, the reason why I called all of you here today is to announce something. Yihua said gravely. In actuality, everyone really wanted to know Daji's identity. Is she his honor's concubine? How did his honor coax your wife to actually make your wife agree to such a condition? Yihua seemed to know what his subordinates were thinking and said faintly, "This person is called Daji, she is my female servant." Female servant? Is she the type of female servant that warms the bed?
At the very least, that was what all of the men were thinking in their hearts.
Look at that Daji's appearance, what the fuck? So flirtatious, coupled with that respectful attitude of hers, this kind of contrast really makes one unable to stop even if they want to. Other than Wei Chong, as long as they have a girlfriend, all of them would grab onto their man's waist. What are you looking at? Have you never seen a beautiful woman before? Do you want to change your girlfriend? If you want to, then just say it. When Yihua saw this scene, he felt helpless as well. Why are all of my subordinates being so henpecked by their wives? Where is your domineering attitude? Did they get eaten by dogs? Let's see if Qingya and the others dare to be mischievous. If they don't listen, then scold them. If they don't listen, then beat them. If they still don't listen. End of chapter. Chapter 853. If I don't give them some benefits, I won't be able to appease them. Qingya was very satisfied with the women's actions. This is how I should teach them a lesson, lest they start a harem in the future. This was the first time Daji saw her master's subordinates, and she discovered that every single one of them was very strong. Daji immediately felt pressured. I have to train hard. After all, I am master's maid, and my strength definitely has to be high. The reason why I held the annual meeting this time around is to talk about my thoughts, and I want to hear your opinions. Yihua said. If it was in the past, I definitely wouldn't listen to other people's opinions. If I say that it is definitely going to happen, even if it isn't definitely going to happen, I will make it happen. The subordinates slightly lowered their heads and listened to Yihua. Qingya and Donghuang Baiji were also very curious about what Yihua was going to say. Yihua was a person of action, and not a person who only focused on theories. If he thinks of something, he will do it. This is what a real man is like. I feel that humans and aliens should be able to coexist peacefully. Let's try it out in Wuxia Empire. Yihua said gravely. Hearing Yihua's words, everyone went into a daze. Especially the 5 people of the 7 deadly sins, they don't have any good impression of humans at all. Towards the current situation, they only feel that his honor is raising humans. However, after hearing what his honor said today, it seems like his honor is going to implement a benevolent policy. Is his brain fried? How can humans and aliens possibly coexist peacefully? In the tens of thousands of years of history of Kangluo continent, such a situation had never happened before. The 3 wives felt that their husband's idea was not bad. It turns out that Yihua is a good person, and he knows the importance of coexisting peacefully. However, Qingya and the others still underestimated Yihua's original intention. As an alien, Yihua naturally has to give benefits to aliens, and he can't keep giving benefits to humans. After all, in the past, I hated humans very much. The most important thing is that the aliens should be rising up, instead of hiding from them. When the time comes, I will wave the flag, and all of the aliens in Kangluo continent will gather in the north. And the south will be the humans. What will happen then? When humans fight against aliens, not only will there be aliens, there will also be humans. That will be an epic battle. Right now, Yihua was not only imagining that all of the aliens will gather together to resist the humans' invasion. Right now, Zhu Tian was still in cat form and was currently being carried by Brett. However, Zhu Tian immediately understood his honor's intention and raised both of his hands in approval. If you all have something to say, then say it, don't hide it. When Yi Hua saw that his subordinates were hesitating and daring to say it, Yi Hua saw that his subordinates were hesitating. Lai Gu cupped his hands and said, Your Honor, how can it be possible for the other races to coexist peacefully with the humans? The humans hate the other races, and the other races hate the humans too. Wei Chong also took a step forward and said, Your Honor, right now, Voidless Empire is gradually becoming more and more prosperous, and they have even established a merchant guild. If we were to allow outsiders to enter Voidless Empire, I'm afraid that the consequences would be dire. At this moment, even Yi Zizi stood up and said, Your Honor, the war between the humans and the mutated races in Kangluo continent has already been deeply rooted in people's hearts. I hope that Your Honor will reconsider. Yi Hua was originally in high spirits, and he was even fantasizing about how his subordinates were praising him for being wise. But in the end, you actually dared to go against my suggestion? Do you guys want to die? Is it because I don't show my might that you guys are getting arrogant? All of Yi Hua's subordinates could clearly sense his honor's anger, and they immediately shrugged their shoulders. Honest words are unpleasant to the ears. Yi Hua said respectfully, Your Honor, we cannot be too hasty with this matter. We should do a market survey and see how much hatred the people living in Voidless Empire have towards the other races. Qingya also said tenderly, Yi Hua, we indeed cannot be too hasty with this matter. Right now, it is not easy for Voidless Empire to become more prosperous. If we were to rashly carry out this kind of order, it would cause dissatisfaction. Who dares to be dissatisfied? If they are dissatisfied, then drag them out and behead them. Yi Hua said coldly. This is so annoying. Even Qingya is against my suggestion. Zishan also said something fair. Your Honor, even if you give out the order, how are the other races going to trust you? Will they enter the city or not? Will they think that this is a trap? Although what these people said was reasonable, but it still made me feel very unhappy. The flames of excitement in my heart were instantly extinguished by cold water. Yi Hua, I have a candidate. Donghuang Baiji, who was sitting at the side, suddenly said. Who? Donghuang Baiji said. Mu Ran. Hearing Mu Ran's name, Yi Hua's eyes shone. Mu Ran's influence in northern Liang was very big, and her position in the hearts of the people was also very high. Furthermore, Mu Ran even had the title of saintess. What is the use of a saintess? Of course, it is for the heart of compassion. When Yi Hua thought of the heart of compassion, he immediately had a good idea. Right now, I need some subordinates with high acting skills. If I want to dispel the humans' thoughts towards the other races, I need to help each other. Back then, I had also won the Best Actor, Best Director, and Best Screenplay awards. Thinking up to here, Yi Hua felt that if they knew that what happened that day was fake, what would they do? Divorce? Run away from home? There are all kinds of possibilities. As long as Lai Gu doesn't reveal his true body, this matter will be able to pass by perfectly. It is best for me to not think about this matter for now. Your Honor, didn't you say that you would be distributing the missions after you came over? Why is it that a few months have already passed, and there is still no such thing? Right now, Yi Zizi was already feeling anxious from being bored, and she really wanted to go out and cause trouble. Qing Yutong, who was sitting below Yi Hua, had the same gaze. Those who want to cause trouble, come into the group. I haven't thought about it yet. I will distribute the missions in a few days. Yi Hua said faintly. You guys still want the missions? To actually go against my opinion just now, you guys sure have guts. After hearing that, Yi Zizi was a bit disappointed. However, at least this time, Yi Hua gave me a deadline, in a few days. Just how many days is in a few days? Yi Hua, I will leave the matter of the public opinion survey to you. Today's meeting will end here. Oh right, there might be people coming over next, so make preparations for battle. Yi Hua said faintly. That Yuanyang Manor lost 2 Do Di, and I have already revealed their address. Those people who fainted will definitely speak about it. Therefore, it is very normal for Yuanyang Manor to come over to take revenge. I really don't know if Yuanyang Manor will be able to put in enough effort this time. And also, what kind of method should I use to crush the other party? The Supreme Overlord, have to think about all of these things. This is really giving me a headache. Yes. All the subordinates shouted out respectfully.
You guys can disperse.
Yi Hua waved his hand. He planned to go and look for Mu Ran to have a chat and see what she thinks.
I will go and look for Mu Ran to have a chat. You guys can wash up and wait for me on the bed.
Yi Hua said with a slight smile.
Qingya rolled her eyes at her husband. In your dreams, we will sleep in separate rooms, and you can go to whichever room you want to go to.
Haha, that's right. How about we go to another room? Dong Huang Baiji said jokingly. End of this chapter. Chapter 854.
Yi Hua didn't pay any attention to her at all. Yutong, we will make our preparations tonight.
All right, brother-in-law, with Qing Yutong as an accomplice, is there still a need to be afraid of not being able to deal with them? Qing Yutong, you dare! Qingya glared at Yi Hua with her beautiful eyes. This traitor back then, he shouldn't have pushed Yutong to Yi Hua. Right now, the two of them are working together to bully others. SSS. 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 Qing Yutong made a funny face, then ran out of the room. Most probably, Qing Yutong went to look for Yi Zizi to form a party. Dong Huang Baiji shook her head. Seems like our way of thinking is wrong. Yutong's personality is unchangeable.
Sigh, as an elder sister, there must be something wrong with my brain, to actually push Yutong to Yi Hua. I regret it.
Dong Huang Baiji laughed. It's useless even if you regret it now. What's done cannot be undone.
Sigh, Qingya let out a long sigh, expressing her helplessness. However, at this moment, Yi Hua had already arrived at Mu Ran's palace. Just when he walked into the palace, he saw Mu Ran sitting on the swing in the garden and staring blankly at the moon, seemingly like she was thinking about her family. She didn't even notice that Yi Hua had walked up to her side.
Cough. Yi Hua coughed lightly. Mu Ran was stunned.
She quickly jumped off the swing and respectfully shouted, "Long live the Emperor!"
Get up.
Thank you, Your Majesty.
Mu Ran respectfully stood at the side, looking quite pitiful. Her entire family had been killed, and now, she had no relatives left. Wei Chong had originally planned to tell Mu Ran the truth, but he was stopped by Tang Wei. If he told Mu Ran now, it would be like stabbing another knife into Mu Ran's wounds. Wei Chong thought about it and agreed, so he decided to talk about it in a few years.
However, with Song Konghong by her side, Mu Ran's mood wasn't that bad.
It's all right. Yi Hua walked to the stone bench at the side and sat down.
Mu Ran stood at the side and said respectfully, "Thank you for your concern, Your Majesty. Mu Ran is already much better."
That's good. Now, I have something for you to do.
Mu Ran was speechless. Do you have to say that?
Actually, it's not good. I was just being polite. Please speak, Your Majesty. Take a seat.
Thank you, Your Majesty. Yi Hua let out a breath, then asked faintly, "What do you think of humans and outsiders?" Right now, Yi Hua didn't know what to say to avoid being splashed with cold water later on.
Humans and non-humans?
Mu Ran was very confused.
She didn't know what the Emperor meant by asking this. Could it be a test for her?
It was said that the Emperor liked to ask his subordinates questions. If they answered well, he would praise them, but if they did not, he would scold them.
Idiots, you don't even know this.
Therefore, Mu Ran felt that she had to behave herself and replied, "The hatred between humans and mutated races has existed for thousands of years.
The two sides are like fire and water.
I heard that the incident that happened in the South 10 years ago was also caused by a group of mutated races. The hatred between humans and mutated races has reached an unprecedented level. 10 years ago. This was something that I, the Supreme Overlord, was doing, and now it was actually obstructing my footsteps.
This is really F***ed up.
Mu Ran, do you think human beings and non-humankind beings have a chance to coexist peacefully?"
Yi Hua asked gravely.
If even Mu Ran doesn't want to become the Holy Maiden of 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 the Holy Maiden.
Mu Ran's eyes lit up. My Emperor, it would be best if humans could live in peace with the mutated race. After all, there are good and bad people in the mutated race. Those bad guys from 10 years ago will definitely go to hell after they die.
Yi Hua, F***ck right now. There is a person who is scolding me to my face that I will go to hell after I die. and I am unable to do anything about it.
Let's not talk about the incident that happened 10 years ago first. How do you think human beings should be able to live in peace with a mutated race? My emperor, it is my dream to be able to let humans and non-humankind live in peace. Mu Ran will use my entire life to accomplish this. When Mu Ran spoke about this matter, his gaze became clear. Mu Ran seemed to have found a goal to live on. I don't need you to use your entire life to accomplish this. I want you to accomplish this as soon as possible. Do you have the confidence to accomplish this? Yi Hua asked gravely. I still have to use my entire life to accomplish this? Where do I, the Supreme Overlord, have so much time to wait?
After hearing that, Mu Ran was startled and said hurriedly, My emperor, this is a huge matter, and it is impossible to accomplish it within a short period of time.
Therefore, I have an idea right now, and with your identity, it will definitely be useful. Ah! Mu Ran felt that his brain was a bit lacking.
This emperor is always able to think of all sorts of weird things.
Yi Hua said helplessly. Mu Ran is still too young, and his thinking is not mature enough. Next, Yi Hua slightly arranged the plot of the plot. After hearing that, Mu Ran was dumbstruck. Is this even possible?
Isn't this too? Mu Ran, what do you think?
Yi Hua asked gravely. At the same time, he used Doom's eyes, as if he dares to say no.
Mu Ran said in a low voice, My emperor, your idea. This belongs to the category of deception.
Mu Ran, why can't your brain think properly? For the sake of peace, what is this little bit of deception worth? Think about it, when humans and aliens appear in the entire voidless empire, just how great of a moment would that be? Our deception would be exchanged for peace. So what about it? Did I say anything wrong? Towards Yi Hua's crooked logic, Mu Ran was actually unable to find a point to refute. He felt that the emperor was too good at talking. Mu Ran, just give me an answer, are you going to do it or not? If not, I don't need you anymore. Yi Hua snorted coldly. This Mu Ran needs to be stimulated a bit. No, I'll do it. Mu Ran naturally hoped to be able to see that kind of situation, but he still had to plan it properly.
Perhaps it would really be like what the emperor said. In less than a year, the scene of humans and aliens coexisting in Voidless Empire would appear.
It would truly be a great moment. Very good. From tomorrow onwards, we will plan it properly. Your identity is very important. For the sake of his dream, Mu Ran decided to give it his all.
Mu Ran shall listen to my emperor's arrangements. Yi Hua smiled and stood up, then patted onto Mu Ran's head. Very good, I will be going back first.
Respectfully send off my emperor.
Looking at the back view of the emperor who was leaving, a trace of a smile appeared on the corner of Mu Ran's mouth.
The emperor is such a good person. He is thinking for the sake of the world. If Mu Ran were to know of Yi Hua's true intentions, I wonder what kind of expression he would have. Right now, outside of Azure Dragon Empire, Yang Yao and Shi Yu slowly woke up and shook their heads to clear their minds. Where are the people? Shi Yu asked puzzledly. Palace Master, look over there. Hua Yong suddenly shouted out. Yang Yao and Shi Yu looked over and saw two corpses that were placed together, and it was evident that the corpses were already lifeless. Yang Yao hurriedly ran over to take a look, and from the clothes, he could tell that the corpses were those two Dou emperors. Such a result caused Yang Yao to take a step back. The two Dou emperors from Yuanyang residence are actually dead. Shi Yu, who was at the side, was also endlessly astonished. Those are two living and breathing Dou emperors, and yet, they were actually turned into flatbread. Just how terrifying is the strength required to be able to do such a thing? End of this chapter. Chapter 855. The group of subordinates also did not dare to believe it. Dou Di was no small matter. A group of people surrounded the corpses of the two Dou Di. That kind of gaze and that kind of demeanor was as though they were looking at rare animals. They were even discussing it. How do you think these two Dou Di died? From the looks of the corpses, they should have been crushed by something. Are you stupid? What kind of thing could crush two Dou Di to death? Maybe it was a heavyweight fatty. Yang Yao and Shi Yu walked to one side and softly conversed. Their expressions were more serious. Yang Yao, how do you think they were killed? Shi Yu was also extremely doubtful. Fainting at such a critical moment was definitely not something they wanted them to see. Yang Yao took a deep breath and said in a low voice. From the looks of the situation at the scene, there was not much of an impact. However, it caused the death of a Do Di. A powerful qi method does not seem to be able to do this.
You mean that it was all based on the pressure that was released?
Sure, you exclaimed. She felt that it was impossible to use pressure to crush 2 Do Di alive. What kind of strength would that require?
Yang Yao shook his head. I also do not know.
It is only a guess. Perhaps someone else knows some high-level qi methods and could also cause such a situation. High-level qi method. Even with a high-level qi method, the person who killed 2 Do Di would at least have the strength of a Do Zun. Sure, you involuntarily broke out in cold sweat when she spoke until this point. The man in the wheelchair was actually a Do Zun. How was this possible? Could a Do Zun be so low-key?
However, when she thought of the 4 women, it was likely that only a Do Zun was qualified to possess them. If she had displayed disrespect earlier, it was likely that she would have been killed by the man in the wheelchair.
Now, we should not be thinking about how these 2 Do Di died. Instead, we should deal with the Yuanyang mansion. Yang Yao exhaled.
His eyes became even more serious.
Hearing Yang Yao's words, Sure, you instantly understood. 2 Do Di had died for no reason. Who would the Yuanyang mansion look for? It was likely that they were looking for them to ask about the situation. Yang Yao, there is no need to worry about this. After all, we did not kill them. Sure, you spoke in a relaxed manner. After all, with her own strength, she would not be able to kill 2 Do Di. She would only be killed by a Do Di. How would she have the strength to kill a Do Di?
However, just as the 2 of them were discussing, a figure suddenly walked out of the void. Everyone couldn't help but raise their heads to look. It was a man wearing a gorgeous robe.
His black hair was very soft and long, almost reaching his waist. A hazy expression appeared on his face as a terrifying aura bloomed from his body. He walked over step by step in the void. This was the first time that Mu Xinhai had heard that a person from Wuxia Empire was able to kill his protectors. Are you guys joking? Even if you want to lie, can you think about it? What Wuxia Empire?
Does a person from an empire have the ability to kill them?
Mu Xinhai asked with a roaring voice. These 2 protectors were the core strength of Yuanyang Mansion. Now that they had died for no reason, the fighting strength of the entire Yuanyang Mansion had directly dropped. How could he not be angry? Mansion Lord, it is true. We can all testify. Hua Yang stood at the side and shouted. He knew that if he didn't explain what happened today, everyone present would probably die. Following Hua Yang's words, everyone started to follow him. After all, they all wanted to live. Although Mu Xinhai didn't believe it, he still wanted to see what kind of strength this Wuxia Empire had to be able to kill his people. Where? Replying Mansion Lord, they are at Northern Liang. Sure, you hurriedly said. He felt that Mu Xinhai was showing signs of letting up. Mu Xinhai took a deep breath and turned around to look at the 2 corpses. His body instantly disappeared from the spot.
However, threatening words still drifted out in the air. If I find out that you guys dare to lie to me, you can just wait to be annihilated.
Following Mu Xinhai's departure, the pressure on his body immediately dissipated. Everyone felt their body relax and felt much more comfortable. So dangerous, we nearly died. Sure, you felt that he had taken a trip to the gates of hell. In front of a Do Zun, he didn't even have the slightest chance to resist. End of this chapter. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.